Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy
They
there.
got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughened him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
Is the next search on February 28, 2020, 7:44 p.m. How does the FBI find people? The people's misspelled P-E-O-O-P-L-E. Did the defendant find out how the FBI finds people in this case? Oh, she found out.
Alrighty, welcome back from lunch. Hope you had a fantastic one. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict. Thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate that. Let's see if we can get everything turned on correctly. The first try. There we go. All right, I was lost in the CrimeCon website page. I'm trying to sort out next year and see what's going to happen there. So interesting. We'll see what we can do there. All right, welcome, everyone. Please take your seats. We are about to begin. I think we're calling this part 5. I'm going to number each part just part 5, but we're about to begin part 5 as the judge has ordered everyone back to be in the next 3 minutes. They should be here. So. Everyone, if you file in really quickly, that'd be great. Britta Aller, congratulations, Britta. You're first in chat today. You've been first before, so you know what happens here. You have won the internet and everything IP-related worldwide, or at least the responsibility to maintain and repair it. So, Britta, just expect that phone to ring off the hook while you are in charge of the internet. And if there's a problem, we'll reach out to you as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate you being first in chat. Very stiff competition today, I might add. Very stiff competition being first in chat. We had a few people. Let's see. Amber was in there. Christiane came in. Kirstiane, I apologize. Ryan Snapple. Let's see. Kim R was right up there as well. Smofie O'Leary, you're pretty quick. Just quite a few. Cass, there was a lot of people that just came in just right as soon as it opened. So that is awesome. I appreciate all of you. And Britta, thanks for being first. And let us know your secrets, because quite honestly, I know when I'm going to post the thumbnail, and you beat me into the chat. So I posted it and then tried to immediately pull it up, and when I pulled it up, you had already commented. So I don't know if you got some sort of time travel thing going. I'm not sure how that works, but great job there. Okay, lots and lots of comments. Let's see here. Apple releases macOS Sonoma. Okay, so this is a problem. Sonoma is not compatible with the software that manages my wireless microphones. These guys. So I can't update yet. I'm sorry. I use them too much. I need them to work. I got a warning from Rode that currently there's no fix, and it's in the works. But anyway, Renee, thank you very much. We're going to continue covering this Maya trial for those that are just finding us right now, just stumbling into the courtroom. I'm sorry, I was listening to a couple things. One of them was
Shirley
this.
then pulled out a handgun from his shoulder holster.
There's a live press conference going on right now out of Dallas about a deadly shooting, police-involved shooting I was watching. They're releasing video from that, so I was watching that in the background. And, of course, I had Brandy's feed going with the Shabusiness sentencing and the victim impact statements going on the other side. So I'm a little distracted. The competition for the winner of the internet also can't turn its head left. Yes. See, I was trying to get in first as Kirstiane, but I got logged out of my phone. Oh, next time it can be you. That's awesome. I think you've got the secret down. Okay, let's see where we are. We're right here is where we are. So that's what we're waiting. We have the exit sign letting us know that it's actually time to come in. So that'll be fantastic. I was talking to Mrs. RA about Comic-Con 2024. Brandy looks like she had so much fun there, honestly. And I thought, hey, why not plan it out right now? If it's going to happen, what, in May next year, I think it is? Forget the dates. Come in Nashville, CrimeCon. I called it Comic-Con. Trust me, May 31st to June 2nd. And tickets go on sale in 5 days. Tempting. CrimeCon, not Comic-Con, right? Yes, we were talking about Comic-Con earlier about how the fact that I've won tickets on 3 different occasions, one of them being VIP tickets to Comic-Con, and that stuck in my head. But I was talking to Mrs. RA about CrimeCon, and she's like, oh, can you bring a friend if you go? And I said, oh, yeah, it'll just cost them an extra couple $100 to a couple thousand. Depends how well they want their accommodations to be. But anyway, we'll see. I'm not sure if Mrs. RA would be super excited about that environment. Has Brandy announced the date for the 10K sub celebration stream? I haven't heard, but I've had to keep her audio down for a little bit, just as I've been doing a billion things today. So if you guys hear and she has a date and posted one, please let us know, because I definitely want to be there for that. K-Met, sorry I missed you all. Had neck surgery. Recovery not easy. Oh my goodness, K-Met, that is no fun at all. No fun. Rest up and get back to full health. Sherry Smith says, I always go out of my way to not be first in chat. I don't want to be responsible for the internet. I'd mess everything up. Sherry, I hope you've seen by now that it's okay to mess up. I mess up my show every single day, and it's something I've done for almost a year now. But yeah, mistakes are fine. This is a very forgiving audience, and as long as you get it fixed, before too long, we'll let it slide. I think she said the next couple of weeks will be the celebration. She hit 10K before she thought she would. Yes, it was a little sudden. I think there were a couple big boosts right at the end that we saw her getting close, and then everyone sort of cheering on and sharing, and some big names, put her name out and encouraged their audiences to join up, and it was wonderful to see. It was fantastic. But I mean, look at it. She's been here for 5 months. 5 months she's been live streaming roughly, because that takes her back to, because it was Alex Murdaugh, which is where she sort of started. Or that was when she was on Twitter, so it was right after that. But have you at least vacuumed your car yet? Yes. We got new plates on the car, new plates. So I'm apparently we were driving an unregistered car for over a year, and didn't realize it. We had done everything except for get the new plates.
Computer back up.
Oh, Judge is logging in. Hang on 1 second. Password 123, enter. There we go.
Okay, are there issues we need to address?
Andriel, let me know if there's anything I can do to help you out. If you just need questions or answers or just want an inside look or something, give me a call on the burner phone. I'm seriously, I'm happy to help anything I can do.
For Dr. Duncan's testimony, 2365. Both of these are part of her medical file, and those objections on 2365 and 2530-045.
I'm sorry, can you say the first number again?
2365. Oh, I'm sorry, that one's...
Yeah. 2365, it says Jack Kowalski's notes?
Yes, and it's a 5-page document, Your Honor. We'd leave out page 5, which is some sort of cover sheet to the attorney, but pages 1 through 4.
Can someone put it up so I can look at it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, so me.
Your Honor, we just need
I just turned it on.
you to turn it on. Thank you.
Yeah, so where is this document, where does this document live?
Where is this document appear, Your Honor?
Yeah.
It's part of Dr. Duncan's medical file for psychological diagnosis.
And what is she going to testify as to the purpose of this document, if any?
To inform her evaluations of each of the family members and provide psychological diagnoses or not for each of them.
Your Honor, they're hearsay. They're actually hearsay within hearsay. Sometimes 3 layers of hearsay. Dr. Duncan spoke to them directly for her evaluation. She certainly can testify to that, but this is hearsay and hearsay within hearsay.
Good.
It's the next page.
These are notes written again by Mike Kowalski, provided directly to Dr. Duncan.
By Mike Kowalski?
Maya Kowalski.
Oh, Maya.
My apologies.
Was this given to Dr. Duncan? I mean, what?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was this at Dr. Duncan's request?
I don't know the genesis in that regard, Your Honor. I know that in each of the reports, she lists the documents that she reviewed as part of her report, and this appears among them.
Let me see the next couple pages. Who's?
Again, Maya.
The next one. Is this the last page?
Lies.
When was this or these pages developed?
Well, her evaluations occurred in December of 2016 and January of 2017. Maya's examination, for example, the contact date with Maya was on January 6th, 2017. And again, they appear as part of that file of things that Dr. Duncan reviewed in preparing her report. And the reports are in evidence.
The exhibit you've seen was clearly prepared from Maya to her attorney. It says for attorney. It wasn't for the purposes of evaluation. They contain hearsay within hearsay. So we object on both of those bases.
So was Dr. Duncan retained to actually provide medical care for Maya Kowalski?
No, Your Honor.
Not counseling, Your Honor, but diagnosis.
Judge, this is one where there was a request for before the shelter court for suggested names and for Maya to be evaluated. Now, it's not a CME, but it was an agreed upon 2 people. One was Tashana Duncan, and the other was Dr. Pradeep Chopra of Brown Medical School, who will be here, I think Thursday or Friday. But in any event, her job was to obtain this kind of information and provide a report to the court, which she did. So, pure treating physician, no, but clearly outside of hearsay.
Wow. Anything further?
No, other than I think the plaintiff has conceded that these notes were not done for the purpose of medical diagnoses. They were done at the request of the attorney. And this is a forensic examiner hired by the plaintiff. This is not an independent exam or a court-ordered examiner.
At present, 2365, I'm sustaining the defendant's hearsay objection. There's no exception that applies at this point. What's the next one?
Note for the record, Judge, that we believe that 80323, statement by a child with physical, mental, emotional, or developmental age of 16 or less, describing child abuse or neglect, sexual abuse or unlawful sex, where in the presence of the child is admissible. This, I think, can be classified as child abuse or neglect, and the court would have to find reliability, and then Maya would testify as a corroborative evidence.
Okay.
In a criminal matter.
You haven't done what you need to do for child victim hearsay.
Not yet.
I've done many of those hearings. I can tell you haven't done what you need to do for child victim hearsay.
I'm aware of this. Your Honor.
Okay. So, and it's not going to happen in the next 5 minutes either.
Probably not.
I know not. So what's the next one?
Next one, Your Honor, is 2530-045. And it's a photograph of Maya, I believe in June or July of 2016. Again, part of Dr. Duncan's file. The objection is cumulative. However, we don't have a photograph from this date, and it's during or at or near the time of her hospitalization excuse me, that's incorrect. It's during or at the time during her recovery before the relapse in the fall of 2016.
Trey, welcome. Good to have you here.
From the
Thank you so much.
Our objection is to the nature of the cumulativeness, and we would just love some direction to the court for how many photos they are going to be admitting. We're trying to prevent a family photo album from being introduced into evidence at this point.
There are quite a few photos. I'm going to let this one in, but just planners, you need to understand you're getting kind of close to the maximum number of photos that you're going to be having. So this one's okay, but there's a whole bunch of photos of Maya Kowalski already in evidence at different points.
There's an upload limit
that show different
on the
things.
photos.
So I'll overrule as it relates to 2530-045, and we'll admit that.
That's all from the plaintiffs, Your Honor.
Anything else from the defense before we bring in the jury?
Just very briefly, Your Honor, again, the defense renews its grave concerns for the continued muddling of DCF shelter orders on visitation. We heard it with the last witness, with the plaintiff eliciting testimony from the last witness that they were denied visitation at the request of the hospital, which again, I know a curative instruction or something that we're going to be working on, but we do have a legitimate concern that that pattern is going to be repeated with the next expert, Dr. Duncan. We would just want to be sure that any questions regarding visitation with Maya, to the extent she's going to testify on that, come with the corollary that this was all pursuant to DCF orders, so we don't continue to muddy the waters on this.
Well, as I've said before, and I said on Friday, I anticipate giving a detailed instruction on this. The reality is some of this evidence is applicable to some of the causes of action, so I can't just say you can't put it in. But I'm waiting on defense to provide me that instruction. I know Mr. Altenburn gave a draft on Friday, and I know he was going to talk to Mr. Elegant, and my hope is by tomorrow in the morning either there's an agreement from the sides or I'm going to either draft my own or modify whatever one that folks have submitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. We did not introduce our corporate representative today, Dr. Smith, Catherine Smith. Michelle Smith.
Mr. Howard Hunter did.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah.
Not to the jury, Your Honor. That's
not to the jury.
Yeah.
Your Honor, if I could just respond briefly to the allegation that we're muddling the record. There is eventually, if these court orders come in, there is nothing limiting spiritual services, prayer in the hospital in his court orders. So the allegation that we're muddling the record by bringing forth that testimony is just inaccurate.
My comments stand. Anything else?
There you go.
You ready to bring in the jury? Let's bring in the jury.
Cajun Randy, I can only stream one thing at a time. That's it. I can't follow two trails at the same time. I'd encourage you if you have the desire. I'll even be willing to consult with you and see what I can do to help you get your own channel started if you want to follow one like that.
Okay, welcome everybody. Please be seated. Members of the jury, I want to confirm while you were on lunch break, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves, you did no investigation, and you received no information. Is that all correct? Correct. Are you going to get tired of me asking you that question all the time? Can't tell you the number of times I've said that to any number of juries. Plaintiff, your next witness.
Dr. Tashana Duncan.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Now you're going to walk around and have a seat in that stand. Thank you.
You may inquire.
Good afternoon. Would you please state your full name for the record?
It is Tashana, T-A-S-H-A-W-N-A.
And have you been called here this afternoon to testify to the psychological evaluations you did of each of the Kowalski family members, Jack, Beata, Maya, and Kyle?
Yes.
Before we explore your evaluations, will you please briefly describe your education as it relates to the field of psychology?
I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Florida. I'm a licensed school psychologist, and I attended the University of Florida to obtain all my degrees.
And what is the highest degree you've obtained?
A PhD.
And what was your PhD? What was the focus of study?
Psychology.
How long have you been practicing in the field of psychology?
I don't have my CV in front of me, but I believe that I got licensed in 2001 or 2 for my licensed psychology. My school psychology was the year following.
And you maintain an active practice in the vicinity of Venice, Florida?
My practice is located in Bradenton, Florida, but I see a lot of individuals from this area.
By this point, you've been practicing in the field of psychology for 20 plus years?
Yes, approximately.
And describe, if you would, your clinical practice.
As part of my practice, I see a lot of children and adolescents for therapy. In addition, I do parent coordination, and I complete social investigations, so I do a lot of evaluations of parents as well.
In this instance, you were retained back in 2016 by the Kowalskis?
Yes.
And they ultimately approximately how much you charged for your services during that time?
At that time, my rate was $250 an hour, and $50 an hour evaluations.
Okay, we've got more issues with the feed. Hold on one second. We're going to see if we can get it another source pulled up here.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Do you want me to?
I can break it down.
Okay.
As part of your evaluation, did you receive medical records?
Hang on,
I did.
I have to get the picture upgraded. It's a lower quality. Just 1 second.
Did you conduct collateral interviews?
I did.
Can you explain a little bit about what a collateral interview is in your field?
In this particular case, I had asked the parents to provide me names of individuals that I could speak with to get to know the family better. For the children, teachers would be considered a collateral interview. So I spoke with the classroom teachers. Some of them I did written interviews. I had them fill out information on the parents.
You spoke with physicians that had treated Maya?
I did.
You spoke with friends and family?
This is a school psychiatrist, I believe.
You spoke with neighbors, teachers?
Yes.
These were all collateral interviews that were part of these evaluations?
Yes.
And then further, ahead of reaching your opinion for each of them, you conducted a one-on-one interview with the subject, whether that was Maya or Beata, or Kyle, or Jack.
I did, and I do not have my records in front of me. They're with me, and I can get them out if I need to.
Sure.
But I do know that I met with the parents on multiple occasions. Kyle, I believe that it was one occasion, but I would need to look at the chart.
Psychologist, thank you.
But Maya, I know that my evaluation was completed with her at one occasion because it was at the courthouse at the time I met with her to do it.
All right. Your Honor, Trial Exhibit 2006 has already been admitted into evidence. May we publish for the jury?
You may.
All right. This is your psychological evaluation for Maya Kowalski, is it not?
It is.
And just looking at the header, the subject was Maya Kowalski, and it says contact date January 6, 2017. Is that the meeting or the evaluation you conducted at the courthouse that you previously mentioned?
It is. It was that date.
All right. And the report was issued February 1st, 2017?
It was.
And by that point, Maya was 11. She turned 10, had her 10th birthday in the hospital, right?
Correct.
All right. If we'll look down towards the bottom of the page, you list all of the medical records and documents that you reviewed. For example, the fourth one down, you reviewed the records from Dr. Wassenaar, who the jury heard from this morning?
I was not aware the jury heard from him this morning, but I did review records from his office. Some were provided to me and some I requested, my office requested directly from him.
All right. And turning to the next page, you reviewed and received the neuropsychological evaluation of Maya Kowalski dated October 20th, 2016. This is the third entry on the page.
Yes, and I believe that was completed by Dr. Lewis, I believe.
Dr. James Lewis?
I believe that was his first name. I don't have it in front of me, but it sounds familiar.
You also reviewed psychiatry and psychology notes from Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, did you not?
I did.
And if we look down, approximately 8 or 9 down, you see a psychiatry consult signed by Mark Cavett, MD. Do you know Mark Cavett to be a psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital?
Yes, he's been there many years.
You also reviewed approximately 20 entries down Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital's records for the period October 7th through November 10th, 2016. And then importantly, 3 from the bottom, you reviewed all of the inpatient psychiatry, psychology, and physiatry notes from Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital.
I did, if it's listed.
All right. Turning to page 4, and that list continues through page 3, now to page 4. You reviewed, among the items you reviewed were a photo of Maya Kowalski at Tampa's Lowry Park Zoo. You see that?
Yes. I actually recall that picture.
All right, if we could publish for the jury 2530-045, previously admitted into evidence.
You may.
And this photograph, do you see the date?
It is dated June 21st, 2016.
And so this would have been approximately 2.5 months before her admission in October to Johns Hopkins Hospital.
Yes, if that's date correct.
It looks like...
Mr. Whitney, can you hold on one second? Let me try to cycle the presentation system.
Yes, sir.
We're having technical issues. They're going to turn it off and on again. Hey, Cajun, I hear you. I understand. There's some high interest cases that are out there that a lot of people seem to not cover.
And
I can explain that when we get more
Is that
time.
a wheelchair behind her? But she appears to be standing, does she not?
She is, and I cannot identify, and I do not recall what was behind her, what I was told, but she appears to be standing.
All right. Back, if you could turn back to page 4 of the report. You also reviewed and you were aware that she was being followed and counseled at Eagle Wings Counseling Center. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you have any knowledge or know by reputation the counselors and psychologists at Eagle's Wings?
It's all good.
Through the years, I've had an opportunity to interact and consult with several of the therapists there. And I was familiar with specifically one of them, and I believe that may have been the first case that I got to know one of the two therapists that were working with her.
Do you remember either of their names at the moment?
Lauren Mock is the one that I've had the most experience in working with. And unfortunately, I think maybe it was Rebecca, but I don't remember the last name without looking at my notes. I have them here if you need me to look them.
Turning to the bottom of the page, clinical interview, is that referencing the one-on-one interview with whoever the subject was, whether that was Maya or Kyle?
I don't know if they tried to settle.
All right. And then teacher interview, the jury's already heard from Ms. Dieter, and then the other gifted teacher was Diana Shepler. You interviewed both of them?
Yes, I actually had a written interview, which is listed as the teacher questionnaire, and then I had
I understand. I realize it's
verbal
genuine.
interview as well.
And I am as well. I'd be happy to
And then
address it
last
when we
on
get a pause or a
this
break.
page, you not only did you review the psychology and psychiatry records at Johns Hopkins, you conducted an interview with Jennifer Katzenstein at Johns Hopkins Hospital, correct?
I did, and I spoke with her a couple of times in the process.
All right, turning to page 5, the jury will have this for review during deliberations, but I'm going to focus on some of the more pertinent entries. I'm looking at, after background information here, 3 paragraphs down, the last sentence, you say, as a result of the lack of a coherent approach, it appears that she received little to no medical treatment while hospital administrators and DCF insisted her condition was psychological. Do you see that, Dr. Duncan?
I did make that statement.
Would you explain a little bit about what you meant by the lack of a coherent approach at the hospital?
Based on the information that I reviewed, I never was provided any type of treatment plan or a multidisciplinary treatment plan. I know that Dr. Katzenstein references that in her notes, in the therapy notes. I didn't ever review any type of treatment plan, even for therapy. In fact, during the course that she saw her, I was able to review the notes provided to me, which would have been every contact or attempted contact with Maya, so I reviewed those as part of the process as well.
And in reviewing Dr. Katzenstein's notes and the limited notes of Dr. Cavett, did you come to learn approximately how many hours of cognitive behavioral therapy they provided to Maya Kowalski during this 3+ month span?
My understanding is Dr. Cavett did an assessment on her based on the records I reviewed. There were 2 contacts, I believe, that he had with a family, but he evaluated Maya in one of them. And then following with Dr. Katzenstein, she did an intake with Maya's parents and Maya in October, And then based on the treatment records that I received, they have to document the minutes of therapy sessions. It's pretty standard in the field, even for outpatient therapy. And it was approximately 3 hours of individual therapy provided to Maya during the course of from October to when she was discharged, based on the notes I received.
So there, just to clarify, there have been representations that what Maya was in need of during this time was cognitive behavioral therapy. And your testimony is that over 3.5 months, the hospital provided her approximately 3 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yes, after the initial intake with her and the parents, based on the records reviewed.
If we could, and Your Honor, Joint Exhibit 1001 is in evidence. It's the Johns Hopkins medical record. If we could publish for the jury page 3824 from that exhibit.
You may.
If you would focus, so before you zoom in, I'm sorry. Dr. Duncan, do you recognize this as the psychology progress note of Dr. Katzenstein at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, signed on October 14, 2016?
I do. Thank you for enlarging that.
Actually, if you go down below the solid line there, it tells you the date of the record. Okay, at the bottom of the screen there, this is a note from October 13th, 2016, correct?
It is.
All right, and if you'll focus on the last paragraph there on the bottom of the page, it begins, I spent a significant amount of time in conversation today. If you'll just read that briefly to yourself. Did you become aware during the course of your evaluation that there was a back and forth, if you will, over Maya's hospital homebound services, and that had caused her some stress?
I was aware of that.
And zooming out for a second again, this begins, I spent a significant amount of time in conversation today with Maya's parents. I want to give the jury a picture of when you testified to 4 hours of treatment. I believe you draw that from the visit information above. It says type of visit, length of visit. Is that where you're drawing that from?
Yes, and Dr. Kassenstein would note, for example, if it was very brief, she might put 1 minute, she might put 25 minutes. In this case, it was 60. She even documented if she went to the room to provide services, and for example, in some of those, Maya was not in the room, so she would document the services weren't provided. On one occasion, her father was there. She noted that, but there weren't services provided, so she would put 0 minutes.
So in the tabulation that you did of 4 hours of therapy over 3.5 months, you included the 60 minutes, which included apparently a lengthy conversation with Maya's parents. Is that right?
I did.
All right, we'll turn back again to Dr. Duncan's evaluation of Maya Kowalski, page 5. Go down a little bit further, please. And the last paragraph, last sentence of paragraph 4 here, it begins, however, prior to Maya being removed from the home, there was no evidence that Maya's mother, Beata, had ever suffered from mental health problems. Do you see that, Dr. Duncan?
I do now. So I'm triple okay. It's highlighted. Thank you.
We'll try to catch up on the highlighting. In stating that, you had reviewed the counseling records from Eagles Wings and the other providers?
I had. In fact, after Maya was diagnosed, it's not uncommon, like in her case, she sought out therapy and learning to develop some coping strategies to deal with that stressor, and that was in the notes that I reviewed.
But in your review of those records from outside providers, you never saw a mental health diagnosis of Beata Kowalski?
No, not that I can recall. Beyond the one I said that she saw a therapist, but it was noted for her having stress related to her daughter's illness.
Thank you. Turning down to the footnote here, we referenced Dr. James Lewis before, and the footnote 3 says that Dr. Lewis suggested that variability in Maya's composite scores on the assessment may be indicative of psychomotor slowing secondary to central nervous system depressant side effects. This evaluator would suggest that there are many possible, and if we can turn to the next page, And continue with the footnote. Many possible explanations for variability in the composite scores. Dr. Lewis's hypothesis can neither be supported nor ruled out without baseline data and further retesting. It remains an unproven hypothesis. First question. Please explain a little bit about the importance of baseline data.
In this particular case, Maya had some significant differences across her scores, and we know that statistically that's pretty unusual, but it does occur. In fact, the manual will go through and tell us the likelihood that occurs. The problem that I saw with the hypothesis was he was linking this discrepancy between scores to medication that maybe she had been prescribed in the past, and there was no prior testing that we do not know there was some other reason that she may have had those scores. She may have been born that way, her brain working that way. For example, if somebody had head trauma or you had seizure disorder or different neurological conditions can impact, your cognitive functioning. And so he did use the word likely. I testified to this in another hearing that in this particular case, I think even if Dr. Lewis was here, he would use the word likely because there was no data previously to, prior to the medication being administered.
In reviewing Dr. Lewis's report, had he made any statements about whether Maya had been administered medications near the time of this assessment that he performed?
I recall reviewing that that day he made a comment that she was not on any medication, but there was an indication in the records that prior to that she had been on some. I don't have his report.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
If we could pull up Joint Exhibit 1046, which is Dr. Lewis's report. May we publish for the jury, Your Honor? It's been admitted.
You may.
All right, so here we have Dr. Lewis's report, neuropsychological evaluation dated October 20th, 2016. This is 13 days into Maya's hospitalization at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. Focusing on page 5, if we could. Third paragraph from the bottom, if we could highlight that. Dr. Lewis there
maybe zoom in
discusses the selection of a pediatric neurologist is crucial. What was your finding regarding Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital's involvement of a pediatric neurologist?
None of the information that I ever received or reviewed indicated that the consult, the neurological consult that he recommended was followed up on. In addition, I assume that Dr. Lewis didn't have this information, but Maya actually had been evaluated by a neurologist that was on her insurance panel as well. He was referencing some of the fee-for-service, I believe, providers that she had seen in this report.
So Maya Kowalski had seen pediatric neurologists prior to admission to Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
I know that at least one, because I reviewed the records recently and I recall.
And so to the extent that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital claimed or claims not to have had a pediatric neurologist on staff to conduct this evaluation, there was at least one in Maya's history that could help.
Objection, Your Honor. Overruled.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. We already established you were aware that there was at least one pediatric neurologist that had seen Maya Kowalski before her admission.
Yes.
So my question is, to the extent that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital claimed or claims that they were unable to follow up on this recommendation by Dr. Lewis because they did not have a pediatric neurologist on staff, they could have reached out to her existing pediatric neurologist.
I object on the leading and the argumentative nature of the question.
Overruled. You can answer.
I had the information, so I have no reason to believe that they didn't have the same information the families had indicated to me they provided.
All right, if we could turn to page 8 of his report, please. And let's turn to why that was so crucial for Mike Kowalski. We're 4 paragraphs from the bottom. It begins with the diagnosis of factitious disorder by proxy is a working diagnosis, but this needs to be confirmed by a pediatric neurologist who would work with the attending and consulting all children's medical staff to definitively rule out whether this child actually ever had RSD or CRPS. And from your review of the records, that never happened.
That never happened based on a review of the records that was provided.
Now, turning back to Dr. Lewis's hypothesis about the evidence of psychomotor slowing in Mike Kowalski and his statement that she was not on any medications at the time of her evaluation on October 20th, 2016. Let's put up Exhibit 1001, page 429 to begin. And at the bottom of the page below the solid line, you see this is a progress note from October 17th, 2016. Do you see that?
I'm sorry, what am I looking for?
Just looking for the date.
Oh, I see the date, yes.
All right.
We're going to back up just a tiny bit in time.
431, the note continues. Just looking for the date.
Oh, I see the date, yes.
A better audio feed here.
And if we'll turn to page 431, the note continues. And page 431. It lists her active medications. If we could zoom in on her active medications.
I can see them.
All right, you can see them.
But I can read them.
Great. His evaluation occurred on October 18th, 2016. On October 17th, 2016, if you look at that list of medications, do you see any medications on there that would have the effect, a cognitive effect or a psychomotor slowing effect?
I really can't answer that question because I'm not a medical doctor. That's something I would consult with a medical doctor who's prescribing to inquire about those medications.
All right, you'll defer to the medical doctors on the effect of those medications?
Yes, yes.
Understood. We can take that down and turn back to trial exhibit, Maya's report, trial exhibit 2006. Page 6, please. All right, so in the top paragraph there, you're, in the middle of the paragraph, you're recapping Dr. Lewis's report here, and you wrote he suggested a working diagnosis of factitious disorder by proxy, but said that this needs to be confirmed by a pediatric neurologist. This is what we just discussed, right?
Yes.
And it never happened.
Not to my knowledge.
And then he also recommended that Maya should begin individual trauma therapy. 3 lines from the bottom of that paragraph. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you see any indication in the records that Maya was ever provided individual trauma therapy?
Not based on the psychotherapy and psychological progress notes that I was provided. It didn't reference it was trauma therapy.
Okay. Turning to findings and impressions below. You wrote JHATCH, which is an acronym for Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, correct?
Yes.
All right. Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital would not permit professionals without staff privileges to meet and evaluate Maya on JHATCH premises. Would you explain a little bit about your collateral interview with Maya Kowalski versus your evaluation at the courthouse and why those accommodations or arrangements were necessary?
Sure. Initially, I was asked to evaluate the parents and Kyle. There was some disagreement, was my understanding, on whether Maya would be having additional evaluation beyond Dr. Lewis's evaluation. And so as part of the process, I asked about speaking with Maya to interview her. It wasn't to evaluate her, but just to gather information about her family, her parents, because I was evaluating them and her brother. So I contacted the hospital, staff at the hospital. I do not have staff privileges at All Children's Hospital. I'm not on staff. And I inquired about making arrangements to go up to meet with Maya. And the person that I spoke with let the hospital know that I would be, coming up to expect me. And I believe it was on a Saturday morning. I drove up. And when I met with Maya, she was initially in the rec center. And so they did offer to try to find us a room, but there were these long corridors where no one was really present, and they were having some difficulty locating a room. So I met with her in this corridor. I mean, there was privacy. And so I met with her to interview her there. And as I previously testified, that was not an evaluation of her. Subsequently, later...
Let me stop you there, if I could. She's in the rec room. You walk down the hallway with her. What stands out to you about the interaction that you had with her in the hallway as you're conducting this interview?
Certainly one of the things is her condition. During the time she was in a wheelchair, and so I helped wheel her out. And I was, I believe I was sitting on a bench. It may have been a chair, but my back was against the wall, and she was adjacent to me. And the way that her feet were turned, I think it would have been impossible, to maintain that posture for a period of time that I met with her. In addition, she was very concerned about people overhearing our conversation, even though the hallway was, I think maybe a couple people walked by, but we would quit talking. It was very isolated. And what else stood out for me about that interview is she told me that she had not been able to speak with anyone privately, and that she wanted to speak with her priest in private and her attorney, and to please get messages to her attorney that she could not have private calls with him.
Now, turning to that versus the courthouse, why was it necessary that you evaluate her at the courthouse?
I did not have staff privileges at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and it's with many hospitals. It takes a while to go through the accreditation process, and they have to have a meeting to approve you. I have been on at other hospitals. I just haven't there. And so because of their policies, that you, in order to do an evaluation on the premises, you have to be staffed, and this was time sensitive. It was made arrangements for her uncle to pick her up, was my understanding. I mean, he's the one that brought her to the courthouse. And the court made arrangements for me to use a private room. It was well ventilated. There were windows, but it was private location. It was an appropriate place to do assessment.
The long and the short of it is that Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital did not grant you emergency privileges so that you could conduct this evaluation in the hospital.
Objected the form. Objection on foundation and
sustained. Were you allowed to conduct an evaluation of Maya Kowalski in the hospital?
No, because I didn't have staff privileges.
Turning down within this paragraph here, findings and impressions, you wrote she was not observed to move her legs or feet for the duration of the meeting. You described this earlier with her feet turning in, correct?
Yes, this was description that was when I was doing the evaluation at the courthouse, not early on. I mean, I saw observed similar behavior at both times.
All right, and then at the courthouse then, the next sentence begins, several small wounds were observed on her face and hands. And then you, Maya denied harming herself and conveying the wounds were lesions. Did you observe these wounds?
I did, and I didn't. These were not visible when I met with her previously when I interviewed her.
Okay. And you described a second ago that because of the staff privileges issue, she had to be transported to the courthouse by her uncle. So the hospital had to discharge her for that purpose. So the next sentence begins, At the onset of the meeting, Maya apologized for her appearance, indicating her hair was messy. And then you wrote, her hair was not noticeably disheveled. However, it did appear that it needed to be washed. Was it your impression that the hospital had not washed her hair recently?
I could back and refer to my notes, but I visibly remember that it looked like it had not been washed in quite some time. There was a noticeable amount of maybe greasiness. I don't know if that's the appropriate term. And she seemed to be embarrassed about her appearance, when she came in. And of course I told her, it was fine. That I just wanted to be comfortable because we were going to talk some. I explained the process that we were going to work on that day.
All right. At the bottom of page 7 of the report, you begin to summarize your clinical interview and sentence completion with Maya. And then we'll turn, it's just a header there on page 7. We'll turn to page 8, which continues with the clinical interview. Second paragraph, you wrote about Maya. She did not express any concerns regarding her parents or the care her parents had provided her. She did say she worries about her brother, as she knows he cries about her health. Do you recall any further detail about those statements?
Those were very similar to the statement she had provided me earlier when I met with her. As a collateral to gather information about relationships with her parent and brother. Earlier, she didn't express concerns about their treatment of her. She did express concerns about her brother being very upset and concerned about her.
Maya had just turned 11 years old at this time. Did she appear to be bright and a good historian of her medical history?
She had an advanced communicative demeanor for her age, and that was pretty consistent with some comments that Dr. Lewis observed as well in his report.
And so did you feel that what she was relaying to you was accurate to the best of her abilities?
I believe she was being truthful, and in her reports to me, I understood as a child her perceptions might be different than an adult, but again, her communicative demeanor was pretty advanced for her age.
Turning further down the page, fourth full paragraph there. On the right side here, it's split screen now. Next paragraph. Last sentence or two here. Maya offered that she particularly disliked the hospital social worker Catherine Beatty, as she is one of the people that interferes with her ability to communicate with and see others. What additional detail do you recall from your interview with Mike Kowalski on that point?
I know that Maya, her understanding was that I think she saw Miss Beatty as a gatekeeper, and it was unclear to me whether Miss Beatty was following rules that were in place or she was taking it upon herself, or maybe Maya's perceptions were not the same as maybe another observer would be. But she indicated that if she tried to make calls, even to her attorney, that she would sit in the room.
Catherine Beatty.
Yes.
We continue. Next paragraph. Maya repeatedly expressed significant frustration over professionals not believing that she was physically ill and in constant pain. Now, you had already, by this point, conducted your collateral interview with Dr. Katzenstein. Is that true?
By this time, I had spoken with her on 2 occasions.
All right. And you were aware of Dr. Katzenstein's diagnosis?
I recall seeing an initial diagnosis, one of the early...
Let me show it to you.
Okay.
If we could turn to Joint Exhibit 1001, page 3828. This is a continuation of the October 13th progress note from Dr. Katzenstein that we looked at earlier. This is the 60-minute evaluation. And if we look here, page 3828, towards the bottom of the page, there's kind of a white space there. There's a break. And then it says diagnosis. Would you read that diagnosis to the jury, please? And if you can, explain a little bit about that diagnosis.
It's psychological factors affecting other medical conditions. F54, which is the coding for it. It says severe, as there is a close association between her significant stress, anxiety, and exacerbation of pain. And so I will note that this was only early notes, and I did not see it in later ones. And Dr. Katzenstein did not reference this diagnosis when I spoke with her at a later date, but on this particular date where that diagnosis is present, which is consistent with what she told me, she believed the child had some medical conditions, but there was a psychological component to the illness as well. So for example, a lot of times, for example, if people are diagnosed with cancer, they may have a lot of anxiety, and the anxiety might impact their ability to adhere to treatment. And so in this case, she saw her as having some type of medical condition. She said that to me when I spoke with her. Like me, she is, not qualified to make a medical diagnosis. We rely on the other professionals that have that training to do so. But she did recognize that she would benefit from therapy to help learn to manage some of her stress. And that's a lot of the notes were focused on anxiety management, I noticed, in use of cognitive behavioral therapy.
So this diagnosis, psychological factors affecting other medical conditions, am I correct that this is psychological manifestations, symptoms overlaid on top of a legitimate medical condition?
I think that that's a fair summary of what she was suggesting.
All right.
With this diagnosis.
And on one occasion, or more than one occasion, Dr. Katzenstein expressed to you that she believed Maya had a physical condition.
She did. She never referenced this diagnosis to me. I spoke with her after she had seen her 8 or 9 occasions, and the date that I spoke with her, the notes I have from her, what she reported to me verbally, matched the medical records that she provided me. And at that point, again, she didn't mention a specific diagnosis, but she was concerned about her mental health, and she was concerned about the child expressing that she was stressed and feeling isolated because she was not able to see and spend time with the people that she wanted to.
All right, if we could turn for a second to 10,001-3817. It's another progress note from Jennifer Katzenstein, dated October 19th, 2016, so about a week later. And if you'll highlight the interval history, all of the following, the 3 paragraphs there. And in the first paragraph, I want to focus on Maya was relating in the middle of the paragraph to Dr. Katzenstein that the physical therapy, especially the physical therapy at TGH, was the worst thing for her RSD. Did Maya explain that to you?
She did not speak of TGH a whole lot with me. She spoke more of the therapy at Johns Hopkins Hospital.
And she also discussed here hyperbaric oxygen therapy and Maya's thoughts that it had been helpful.
Yes.
And then, second to last paragraph there, when asked to define her pain, Maya stated that she has pain all over and it is really bad. Subjective reports of pain, how do you treat those in your practice? If a patient reports pain to you, especially a pediatric patient, a child, do you take that at face value, or how do you account for that?
Objection, Your Honor. Foundation and the witness's training and experience is not a medical.
Overruled.
I believe one of the reasons that Dr. Katzenstein was employing cognitive behavioral therapy is because Maya did believe whether she was experiencing, not her perception is her reality, that she was experiencing significant pain. And that's why if you look at the psychological progress notes for the therapy, she focused a lot on cognitive behavioral therapy. She used some patient education, and she used some biofeedback based on her notes.
In the last sentence there of that second to last paragraph, she described her parents as her main form of coping, and that she stated she would eat more if they were here, She asked me if she could send her parents a letter, which I deferred to the medical team. In your conversations with Dr. Katzenstein, did she ever explain to you why she needed to consult with the medical team before allowing Maya to communicate with her parents?
No, that topic never came up.
All right, we can turn back now to the report of Maya Kowalski, Exhibit 2006, and we're back at page 8. And the last paragraph there begins, Maya repeatedly expressed significant frustration over professionals not believing that she was physically ill and in constant pain. Well, Dr. Katzenstein believed she was in pain, but apparently some of the other professionals did not.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative and leading. It's also mischaracterization of the report.
Let's get the whole question. I'm sorry, can I hear the question again, please?
I don't know if I can recall it perfectly, but I'll just re-ask it.
Thank you.
This statement, Maya repeatedly expressed significant frustration over professionals not believing that she was physically ill and in constant pain. Was that a reference to the professionals at Johns Hopkins Hospital?
It was when she spoke with me.
All right. Moving down in the middle of the paragraph, she expressed frustration over physical and occupational therapy at JHATCH. She stated that they were the worst. She stated that therapy has exhausted her and the pain is worse after participation in them. Any further detail that you recall?
That's generally a summary of what she shared with me, and as I mentioned earlier, I think that that's one of the things Dr. Katzenstein was trying to work with her when those brief meetings she had with her is compliance, to get her to comply with some of the therapies. In fact, they initiated like a behavior chart with some incentives in place to try to get Maya to be motivated to do those, even though they were uncomfortable for her.
All right. Turning to page 9, first paragraph. That's Maya. She conveyed that she liked the therapist, Rebecca Johnson, she was seeing prior to her admission to JHATCH. Rebecca Johnson, from your knowledge, is with Eagle Wings?
She is. That's the individual. I could not recall her name. And I will say that I know when she first started working with Maya, she worked with Lauren Mock. I think she was finishing up her licensure requirements. But I do know at the time, like in December, she was fully licensed because there was some discussion, or in January, about her continuing to be able to see her, because one of the current concerns was making sure somebody was qualified, given some of the concerns about diagnosis.
Do you recall, in your review of the records of Eagle Wings and Rebecca Johnson, the frequency with which Maya was attending therapy?
Based on the reports obtained from Eagle's Wings and also the family and Maya, she was seeing her on a consistent basis, like weekly.
And that would be more appropriate than 3 or 4 hours over 3.5 months?
Based on what I know about this child, I was shocked when I learned the little psychotherapy she was given, particularly since a lot of people were attributing her issues to psychological issues rather than medical and maybe psychological.
And it looks like on the third paragraph, one of your exercises was a sentence completion exercise. Would you explain the usefulness of this in a psychological evaluation?
Sure. Often when you can do this with adults, I tend to use it more with adolescents and children. It's considered a subjective psychological measure, which means that you can't derive a score for it. I like to tell individuals that often you look for themes and to see if they're consistent with things maybe the child or the adolescent. It could be an adult if you administer it to an adult, or sharing with you, or maybe information that you're getting in other records. And so what happens is I start a sentence and the child completes it. And it can be given one of two ways. Maya is very bright, so I could have had her fill it out. What I ended up doing is reading it to her and filling it out. Just part of that had to do with the time because we were limited in the courtroom. It's not a measure that you follow up and say to the child, why did you answer that way? Again, it's more about looking for things that are consistent with maybe the information in the clinical interview or from other people that may have concerns about the child.
All right, if we could highlight the prompts and the responses here that were conducted. It's the italicized text there. So you would prompt her, for example, you would say, most of all I want, and then Maya would respond?
Yes, she'd say to go home.
All right, and you would prompt her, turning the second to last line, my mother won't.
Second line here.
Second to last line.
Oh, second to let's see.
So,
my mother won't. Like I said, my mother won't, and she responded, hurt me.
All right, and then the last one, mother and I.
That would have been the prompt, and she responded, we like swimming, shopping, hanging out. We like everything. Sorry, that wasn't highlighted. That was part of it.
Next page is page 10 of your report. Now, if you can just back up for page 9 for a second. This is page 10 is a continuation of the bottom there, which is an interview with Rebecca Johnson. That's the counselor at Eagles Wings, right?
Yes.
And in the middle of that top paragraph on page 10, Rebecca Johnson reported to you that from November 2015 to October of 2016, she saw a significant improvement in Maya's mood. Do you recall that?
Yes, that was in my notes from speaking with her. I don't recall her saying that, but it's in my notes that she said that.
Right. And she also believed that Maya's parents played a large part in Maya's progress.
Yes.
Now we get to your interview with Dr. Katzenstein at the hospital. It begins discussing that she had seen Maya for individual therapy sessions while Maya was a J-Hatch, and that she had hoped to see her weekly, but sometimes she was not able to see her on a weekly basis. So this gets to the 3 hours of therapy over the 3.5 months.
Yes.
And then below in that paragraph, she stated that she believed that Maya was physically ill, confirming that earlier diagnosis.
Yes. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you're referring to for a second.
Sure. You conducted next an interview with Dr. Ashraf Hanna, one of Maya's pain management physicians. And how did he describe Maya's parents?
He used the word amazing parents, which is why I put in quotes, as well as loving and caring.
All right, next you did a clinical interview with Dr. Anthony Kirkpatrick, her treating physician that provided the first ketamine infusions. And he confirmed that he has diagnosed Maya with CRPS. Is that true?
He did. He confirmed that to me.
And at the bottom there, he said that the doctors at Johns Hopkins have failed to consult with him. Is that correct?
That was my understanding from my communications with him.
Turning to page 11. You conducted a clinical interview with Pradeep Chopra, a pain specialist in Rhode Island and Brown University, correct?
I didn't conduct an interview. I actually, after I had met with Maya before this report was issued, she actually was evaluated by him early on. When I first met with the family, I ran across an article on Dr. Chopra because he works a lot. My understanding is with children with pain, and the article was on how these children are often misdiagnosed with psychological disorders.
Okay. My mistake. You didn't speak with him directly.
No, I did not. So I got his comprehensive evaluation.
All right. So the jury will hear from him at a later time. So we'll go past that. Let's get to your summary and recommendations after you went through this process, clinical interview, all these collateral interviews, review of medical records. I want to focus on the second paragraph in that section and the second part of that paragraph. It begins, or the part I want to focus on begins, this 11-year-old child's mental health condition worsened as she was persistently limited in her contact with her mother, father, and brother, and then persistently treated by hospital staff as if she or her mother were lying about her pain syndrome. Do you recall any specific statements from Maya Kowalski about the hospital telling her she was lying about her pain syndrome?
She communicated. I'm sorry.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. It's for purposes of medical diagnosis. It's then existing state of mind.
I'm sorry.
You can answer.
Maya looks more pale
The question
today because
is,
she's
do you
all
recall
dressed
what
in
she
black.
told you about the hospital staff claiming that Maya and her mother Beata were lying about her pain syndrome?
I object to the compound of the two in terms of which one.
She can answer.
She wasn't specific to what hospital staff. She used the term broadly, and again, I can pull out my specific interview notes, but this is a summary of the interview. But she expressed a lot of concern that they were not believing that she had a physical health issue, that it was all psychological.
All right. I'll focus then on your statement here after Maya was warehoused for nearly 90 days. Now that's your word, warehouse, so I'd like you to explain that word to the jury and why you chose to use that.
Looking back, it's probably a pretty strong statement, but based on all the information that I got, this child, it didn't seem she was getting a lot of mental health treatment. Based on the information, talking to the medical doctors that had previously diagnosed her, I'm not qualified to do that, but said that she had this rare disorder. It seemed that all children were unwilling to accept some of this information. I know to get Dr. Chopra's evaluation, that the court had to order that for her to be permitted to be able to leave and get that evaluation as a confirmatory, was my understanding. And so she sat there from like October till January. She had very little contact with family and friends. I know early on she even told me she couldn't even see her priest. They would not allow people from her congregation. I have it in, it's discussed in the report that Maya was an active member of her church. In fact, I talk about that some in the evaluation as well.
Let me move on to the next
Okay.
question. That paragraph ends with no less than 3 medical doctors have diagnosed her medical condition. And then I want to juxtapose that to the next paragraph, begins with that the hospital had suggested conversion disorder, and that was contraindicated. How does one affect the other? How does the fact that she's been diagnosed by 3 medical doctors with a medical condition affect the diagnosis of conversion disorder?
If you have an identifiable medical condition that is cause and symptomology, you cannot say the symptomology is a conversion disorder if there is a medical diagnosis and medical etiology for it. And so the medical doctors that I spoke with, information I reviewed, indicated that she had this rare disorder. A lot of people aren't familiar with it, but that the symptoms that she was displaying were consistent with a diagnosis of the chronic regional pain syndrome. That's what they shared with me.
All right, and turning to the last page, page 12. This evaluator does not agree that factitious disorder by proxy or conversion disorder are appropriate diagnoses in light of Maya's documented medical conditions. Based upon your background, training, and experience, and to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, is it and was it your opinion that conversion disorder was a misdiagnosis?
It was not an accurate diagnosis based on the information that I was provided by the medical doctors.
And based on what we've discussed here in this report, your background, training, experience, and to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, do you have an opinion whether it was a breach of the standard of care for Johns Hopkins Hospital to provide only 4 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy over the span of 3.5 months?
Objection and approach. Correct.
I was just typing a welcome to the 13th jurors as Brandy just wrapped up her stream with the sentencing of Shabusiness, where she got life without parole. Sorry to ruin it for those people who haven't watched it yet, but welcome. Good to have you here. Thank you so much. Love. I just let me say this. Brandy looks like she's got more energy, doing better than I've ever seen her. She's just so happy to be back. I think I called it Comic-Con again. CrimeCon was really, really good for her. That's awesome. We need to schedule like one of those a month for her. Keep her doing really good. Anyway, wonderful. Thanks to have you guys back. I appreciate that. Matthew Harris, great to have you here as well. This is sort of like your wheelhouse, Matthew. Dealing with a civil case, family matters. You got some child protective services involvement here. I look forward to hearing you weigh in a little bit. Maybe can we request a CPS related trivia question? I mean, I like the one about let's see, today was about fundraising for politicians, maximum donations, right?
I'm sure you forgot it, so I'll ask you.
I need to be repeated. Sorry.
It was a long question, and it has to be. Do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, experience, and to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty that it was a breach of the standard of care for Johns Hopkins Hospital to only provide approximately 4 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy over the span of 3.5 months?
Yes, based on the information that I'm sorry.
Oh, you can answer.
Okay. Yes, based on the information that I reviewed and was provided.
Okay, so another sidebar.
Do you have an opinion, to adopt your term, that warehousing Maya for 3.5 months in this fashion caused or contributed to psychological injury in Maya Kowalski?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer.
I don't have any current information on her current psychological functioning, so I can't answer that because I haven't seen Maya since I evaluated, other than today when, I saw them in the hall.
All right. Let's turn now to, you did a report for each of these family members, and I'll try to speed this up.
So we're shifting to a different.
We are.
This might be a good time for a break. Okay. Members of the jury, we're going to take a break. I'm going to try to keep it 10 minutes, but it could be closer to 15 minutes. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information.
Okay, so when he says he's trying to keep it at 10 minutes, it might be 15. It sounds like they have some business to conduct without the jury here. Let's see what happens here as soon as the jury's gone. Maya is... somebody commented that she seems to be returning smiles to the jury. She may have formed a connection with them. Her appearance, her friendly nature, her smile, she has a very innocent appearance.
The jury is out of our presence. Everybody be seated.
She's already got people on board.
I just need to go deal with a few things here for the next few minutes. Dr. Duncan, while we're on break, you're not allowed to discuss your case with anybody, okay?
Can I just sit here?
You can sit there. You can sit down. If you need to use the restroom, that's fine. But you just can't talk about the substance of your testimony.
Sure. I think it's necessary, Your Honor, if that's okay.
Okay. 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, so 10 to 15 minutes. The judge is off the bench for just a wee bit, so we get to stare at the exit sign. I don't know. She's been smiling, and I think it's a genuine smile, like a return smile. Like people are smiling at her, and she's smiling back. This is a win. She's a pretty girl. She's beautiful. She's sitting there. She's very well composed, even though she's sat and been quite emotional through some times. This is crazy. Let's see. Matthew Harris says, this is the most beneficial testimony from this witness would be her evaluation of the mental condition and what mental harm she anticipates Maya will suffer in the future. It's interesting that sort of like the last questions they ask based on your professional experience, what's the total impact? They're trying to get a sum up. This is like the softball pitch for a home run. And the last questions, he's like, I can't answer that one because I'm like, whoa, that's what you're going to end on? You're going to end on, oh, never mind. I can't answer that question. But interesting. Let's see, questions. Recap, pretty please. All right, so this is a psychologist. I believe that she says she's a school psychologist, but I'm not sure if she was associated with the school that Maya was in or if she just is a school psychologist as well. So I missed that because I was sort of listening to three things at once. Let's see. Anyway, the psychologist has had some findings or some statements in her records that document her interaction with Maya at the hospital, where she was less than thrilled with the treatment that Maya was getting, and disappointed, I guess you could say, at the level of care specifically relating to her mental health. That the Maya should have been getting, according to this psychologist. So it's another professional's opinion looking at this and saying they didn't seem to be doing well, and their allegations that she's not able to meet with things that come in through this, that she's not able to meet with her lawyer in secret, that she's not able to meet with anybody, that she's basically being monitored and guarded and like that was the focus more than her health. So that's what they're trying to present here. Now realize this is the plaintiff. This is the case they're trying to win. We're going to hear other testimony from the defendant showing all the care they've done. When it becomes their turn, they're going to call all the witnesses. They're going to bring in all sorts of records and show all the different things they did and how they tried to help and how they felt that what they were doing was the best care for her at that time, and why they were always in their mind acting in her best interest. Let's see, she only met once with Maya. Our whip, I apologize. I was sort of distracted, so I'm gonna take your word for that. I think that might be the case. I do have to give a shout out though. A shout out right now to Jennifer Castald. I'm not sure if I said your name right, Jennifer. Who is listening at work, not able to log in because work doesn't allow that. But she wanted to say a shout out to all of y'all, the fellow addicts. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Jennifer, and have a great day at work. But thank you. She reached out to me on the burner phone. What led up to the CPS being involved? Mandy, it came from the hospital. CPS did not have any information until the hospital reported, and they probably reported under the mandated reporting laws, where they saw something that possibly could have been abuse or caused by abuse, and because of that, they reported. And in this case, the family's alleging that the symptoms that they saw are symptoms of another disease that exhibit very similarly on a physical level, but are completely unrelated to any abuse. They're saying there was no abuse. It was a loving relationship, and instead they acted as if it was abuse and ignored the treatment of the symptoms, or even pursuing the treatment. So there's here, let me tell you what it says. I put it in the description of the video here because you guys asked a lot. They are suing Johns Hopkins Hospital, and by they I'm talking about Maya, her brother Kyle, and her dad Jack, as well as Jack representing Beda's. I can't say her name right. Maya's mom's estate. So the four entities are suing, and they're suing because they're saying that there was medical malpractice, battery, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and alleged fraud. So they're throwing everything at the wall, really. But part of that is what happens with how the hospital interacts with CPS, where they're saying the hospital said, hey, CPS ordered that we shouldn't do this, but instead the hospital, according to the plaintiff, would take an action, then contact CPS and say, validate our action, and CPS would send something back that validates it. So we'll see as that comes out. It's interesting. How long? I think they said about 3 weeks, but that could be plus or minus a little bit. It just depends. Every time the evidence gets ruled inadmissible, it's something that now cannot be questioned with further witnesses, right? If there's something that can't come in, that's just a whole other line of questioning that gets removed. So the more stuff we see as inadmissible, the shorter the trial gets. We'll see if they bring something else to replace it. But once at the hospital, once at the courthouse. Yes, that sounds right, TJ Bits. I appreciate that. Seems like she evaluated her or met with her twice. The mother demanded specific drugs for Maya against what the hospital recommended. The hospital said the amounts were dangerous. Yes, and it sounds like that, at least in part, the drugs that Maya received, or some of the treatment that Maya received, is now, from a medical position, more acceptable than it was at the time. At least from maybe the hospital's position, that sort of treatment is now more acceptable. It was just more of an outlier at the time it happened. We'll hear more about that, I think. I got a pronunciation guide, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Fellingham Bookkeeping, thank you very much for this. You've given me all the pronunciation guides. Beata. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the easy. She says it's pronounced like Mazda Miata. So Beata is her name. Okay. Hopefully that caught everyone up a little bit, or at least give you enough to get going here. Yet the hospital charged him over $500,000 for this diagnosis. Jennifer, we're going to hear, I want to wait and hear until defense gets to answer this charge, because it does sound really bad that the hospital's basically saying you didn't have CPS, or chronic regional pain syndrome, CRPS. That didn't exist, but then at the same time they billed for it. We've heard a little bit in the opening about that, but I want to hear that addressed a little further, because there was a lot of charges. I mean, there's paperwork. There's paperwork. There's bills that were sent out by this. Let's see. Kind of, sort of, Leanne. Let's wait and see if that paperwork can be admitted into court about the social worker. I'd hate to taint my view here if it's something the jury can't see in this case. It sounds like it might be prejudicial more than probative, but even though it's relevant, but it might have been maybe something more for the previous trial. Just in a short break right now, the judge said it would take about 10 minutes, maybe 15. I'm not sure what he's doing, but it's something unrelated to this case. Maybe it's a bio break. I don't know. He's like, I'm not sure how long I'll be gone, but I'll be quick. I'll try. Love to see the billing information. I'm sure that's going to come in. Ketamine treatment is fairly common now. Casey Smith watches Shabusiness. Hopefully you watched that over there with Brandy. That's wonderful. I think that was the expected outcome there. Oh, complex. What did I call it? What did I say instead of C? Did I make up a word in this one, Lil Miss? Complex regional pain syndrome. Now I want to go rewind and hear what I said. Oh, man. I said chronic. Okay. So at least it was at least a medical term. I was wondering if I said Comic-Con or something like that. Thanks, Greeners, for that. Is it chronic or complex? I think it's complex. Mandy, I think I spoke incorrectly, as I usually do. Old Kiwi Chick says, just got here. What did I miss? Not much, Kiwi Chick. It's been a quiet morning, unless you really like lawyering and just true crime in general. No, it's been a spicy morning. The lawyers from both sides have been lawyering to the best of their abilities. Lots of objections back and forth. I think even though the judge has, in many cases, sided with the defense in lots of objections, I still see that he's being very impartial. That the defense is either making better arguments, or is the evidence that's being offered by the plaintiffs is just not admissible. So I don't think the judge is biased one way or another. Even though if you just look at the scorecard, I think as far as objections go, defense seems to be winning. It's complex. I have it, says Loomis. Okay, thank you. I do not have it, thankfully. thankfully, but I appreciate the correction, Little Miss. So ketamine is used for severe depression. It's been fairly successful. Is that one of the off-label treatments that we're talking about? Or is that the initial usage? Jamie C. says, Recovery Addict, you're so very proud of us being good for the last 2 days. Do we get ice cream? Yes. I'll send the ice cream truck around to your neighborhood with whatever your favorite is. You guys have been fantastic. Chronic indicates the length and severity. Complex indicates several factors. Thank you, Kate, helping us understand the terminology, as there's a ton of terminology in this case. And many of you who have either been in the medical field a lot as a patient or as a provider, because we have people on both sides here. I appreciate the clarification you guys offer us here at chat.
Please be seated, everybody.
Oh, Judge is back. It was quick.
May I stand?
If you wish.
All right.
May I stand?
We wanted to perfect the record on a motion that we discussed, but would need to be outside the presence of the jury and the witness so we can approach or have the witness excused, whatever your preference is.
I'm fine doing it this way unless there's a reason to do it at sidebar.
The witness, Your Honor.
Dr. Duncan, if you could go sit outside.
For you myself, I'm happy to hear
Thank
all
Dr. Duncan, out of the room now. She has to leave. They don't want her to hear this a little bit, so she's going to go outside of hearing, wait for the door to shut.
The transcript will reflect that both the jury and Dr. Duncan are outside the court's presence.
Yes, Your Honor. Again, we want to renew our motion to strike the testimony on standard of care on 3 bases. Number one, it is surprise testimony in terms of this witness never being disclosed as a retained or non-retained expert for offering standard of care opinions. Number two, it's outside the scope of the pleadings, which is alleged as a medical malpractice.
Outside the scope of what?
The pleading.
The
complaint, which alleges a 766 claim for medical negligence in not one for a breach of psychiatric or psychological care. And third, she's not credentialed under 766 to level allegations of medical negligence against a hospital license under that.
This is next level checks.
Or its doctors.
Or its doctors. And I don't believe her opinion was limited to psychological care, even to the extent she expressed it on those
I
bases.
disagree with that last part.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Those are the bases.
Plaintiff.
They have a lot of money. Defense has a lot of money.
Judge, she is qualified and was disclosed as a non-retained expert. And I'm looking for the actual designation, and it was in the
Here's the lady who does all the work behind the scenes. I don't know what her name is, but she comes in clutch times with all the right information. You want one of these people behind you if you're standing up in a court like this. She's like, it's right here. I'm giving you everything you need right here. You just have to read the screen I handed to you.
She is disclosed as a non-retained expert. Her opinions have been limited to the standard of care in the community. She's qualified to testify to that. She's qualified to pass on whether a certain act or action is involved in the pleadings collapse into the proof at trial. There were general allegations.
What was the din of the disclosure?
Looks like the judge might be siding with the defense on this one, saying that this is surprise evidence.
1912, I think, Your Honor, Kelly's telling me.
Thank you, Kelly. That's her name. Kelly's my new favorite person in court.
I've got a filing number.
We're gonna ask for Kelly anytime the lawyers get confused. I hope her name is Kelly, says Greeners. He might have gotten that wrong too. Is that what you're saying? We're gonna call her Kelly, assuming that that's correct.
Okay, I see the name. I don't recall there being a motion in limine with respect to Dr. Duncan.
Ooh.
Was there one?
Laura Dalbert.
We did not make a motion in limine, but we did not have notice either
surprise
for testimony or disclosures that she was going to be giving these opinions.
Now, with respect to the pleadings issue,
we never received a report from her on that subject either.
She wasn't required to give a report.
And we would counter on the timeliness of all of those motions. They made one objection at the time on one question, but not on the remainder.
2816.
We're definitely going to have both retained and non-retained. Some of the doctors that are here testifying are under subpoena. Others are under a paycheck. So, we'll see. Mindy Lou. I'm surprised.
This was count 17.
Oh, this is basically a doctor calling out the hospital for doctoring wrong. Okay, it's somebody on the inside who has the same basic level of trust because of the position they took and the oath they took, saying, "Hey, as one who knows, they did it wrong."
Well, please, I'm looking at the 1912 designation. It says that Dr. Duncan is a retained expert, but it makes no reference to her being retained or offering opinion testimony as to the standard of care.
Given the fact that the defendants posited their own expert late without any approval of the court, and the court granted them the leniency to even have a psychological expert, we'd ask the court to consider
mistrial.
That.
Judge, she was not disclosed as this, and she would never give a report for this.
Well, I'm looking at what was alleged in the complaint. And I do see...
We've had a lot of things struck from
paragraphs
the record.
127 and 128. J. Hatch breached their duty of care by terminating Maya's CRPS treatments, by allowing its doctors to act without the requisite knowledge to properly diagnose or treat, and by acting in opposition to Maya's outpatient provider's diagnosis and treatment regimens. Also 128, failed to develop a coherent treatment plan.
So there's some close, but that doesn't cover exactly what she said. It's close.
Instead, diagnosing Maya with a variety of psychiatric conditions, none of which were treated. So it seems that this is definitely within the ambit of count 8. So that portion is denied.
So that's a win for the plaintiff right there.
Can we have one person arguing, please?
Whoa. Mr. Anderson, I'll take care of who gets to speak.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Altburn, if you're going to speak, I need you up by the microphone.
I'm sorry. I just want to emphasize that count 8 is a medical malpractice claim under 766. And a healthcare provider for which you can receive a standard of review under 766 is defined. She's in 490 as a psychologist, and that is not a healthcare provider for purposes of Chapter 766. If you look at 766, I think it's 102, it gives you who can testify, and it refers then to where to go to look to the numbers. And she can probably confirm for us, but she's a 490 license, not one of the people listed in the statute.
She's a lesser doctor.
That's right.
Well, in any event, there's still the count for intentional infliction of emotional distress.
Is there a standard of care, professional standard of care that's applicable of that?
Reasonable care.
I think it's within the ambit of the pleadings, so then it's just a question of whether she was disclosed.
So they've filed like 3 objections in one batch.
I'm sorry? Oh, Judge, if you look at the disclosure, she is disclosed as a non-retained expert that is disclosed in a, quote, abundance of caution, unquote. There is no indication of that disclosure whatsoever that she is a standard of care witness. It's just not there. And the other.
Didn't y'all take her deposition? I mean, because I remember having multiple discussions about whether y'all were going to take her deposition or not.
We did take her deposition, Judge, and she offered no standard of care testimony. That's my point.
There was no ask it.
Your Honor has been very, very forthright in saying that experts, particularly experts, would be confined to the parameters of their report. She gave no report regarding this subject. She was not disclosed as a retained expert. She was not disclosed as a standard of care expert. And so this is something that was totally unexpected and something that was not touched upon in her deposition.
It's a surprise testimony.
Is it true that there was no report by her that referenced these opinions on standard of care?
Her report is the report, and they've had that in their possession. And non-retained experts, I think, we're in a little different category. I don't recall her report definitely addresses the issue. Now, did she say breach of reasonable care? I can't tell you right now because I haven't read the report.
Your Honor, they asked her the question in her deposition whether her opinions were to a reasonable degree of psychological probability, and she answered in the affirmative. And they were specifically referenced in her report, so she testified to standard of care in her deposition. Additionally, neither side provided reports for non-retained experts. Both sides named a number of non-retained experts, and the way this
She's looking through the window.
Was that retained experts were required to provide reports.
Was there in her report, her being Dr. Duncan's report, that we just showed to the jury, is there anything about standard of care in that? If you could show it to me, if there's anything that you are trying to hang your hat on.
Okay, so this basically the defense wants to throw out the last bit of her testimony. The last probably 3 or 4 questions, they objected to each one. After the break, they came back and said, Your Honor, we need to revisit these. Here's our objections. This is our legal basis. This is surprise testimony. We didn't know this was going to be coming up, so there's no way we could prepare.
Looking that up, can we have court reporter look back and see what the specific question objected to was? Because if they didn't object to the other ones,
I don't want the court reporter. I want the court reporter taking down what our conversation is.
So everyone have to shut up if the court reporter rewinds. Matthew Harris is screaming at his screen right now. This is what you should object to. This is what you should have said. I will say that the hospital has the appearance of big money lawyers who are very good at what they're doing. To be able to come up with arguments like that in just a few minutes, that's very.
You can just tell us what page and you can put it up so I can look at it.
Yes, it's Exhibit 2006, page 005. This sentence was presented. She commented on it. It's the 4th paragraph, I believe. As a result of the lack of a coherent approach, it appears that she received a little bit of medical treatment while hospital administrators and DCF insisted her condition was psychological.
They need the judge, what the plaintiffs need is the judge to say that what's in this report covers in scope
I don't think that's
what she testified to.
The objection was.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Anything in here on standard of care, Mr. Whitman?
They're going to get rid of the last 3 questions. Disregard the testimony, have it thrown out.
I say the professional view is skepticism. She received literal.
I mean, I'd point to page 11. She was persistently treated by hospital staff. She was lying about her pain syndrome. This is the
big paragraph there. After she was warehoused for nearly 90 days without medical treatment for her pain syndrome. And then no less than 3 medical doctors have diagnosed her condition, no less than 3 mental health professionals have evaluated Maya, none of whom have confirmed a diagnosis of factitious disorder. The next paragraph continues, conversion disorder is similarly contraindicated.
Her problem is her report does not say standard of care.
She points out that neither factitious disorder, aproxia, or conversion disorder are appropriate diagnoses in light of Maya's documented medical condition.
So, Mr. Hunter, what is the specific motion?
The motion, Your Honor, is to strike the testimony on standard of care in that there is no basis upon which that testimony was made known to us before trial in this report or in the disclosure.
So you're just basically saying that last question or two, not her entire testimony.
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm talking about the standard of care testimony she offered. There was, and if I remember
which was
correctly,
the most damning
questions.
testimony.
There was 2 different questions. Yeah.
And I don't believe they objected, Judge.
I'm so sorry?
I don't believe they objected to those.
They did.
I'm going to go ahead and grant the motion to strike the last opinion on the standard of care as not disclosed. Anything else?
Well, there's a couple of opinions. First, is it the breach of the standard of care or her statement of what the standard of care is? One had an objection, one didn't.
She can't, there was no testimony in her, or there was no indication in the report she did, and you didn't do a supplemental report that talked about what the standard of care was or whether there was a breach of that standard of care. So,
I understand, Your Honor.
Okay.
So, it would be...
I'm going to tell the jury that the jury is to disregard the last testimony proffered by Dr. Duncan as to the standard of care.
That is so hard to unring that bell. They've sat on it for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's been stewing in their
Anything
heads.
else?
That's it, Your Honor.
Okay, let's bring in Mr. Duncan.
And the witness comes in as well. But I wonder if they'll show her face when she finds out that her testimony about standard of care is going to be...
Okay, Dr. Duncan, just so you understand, the court's going to tell the jury that I'm going to direct them to disregard the last testimony about the standard of care that was beyond what was in your report.
Okay,
Okay.
no worries, no worries.
Let's bring in the jury.
No worries.
No worries, no worries. We got it out already. So. I would say it's sort of sloppy. It was sloppy. This is something that they should have known, that they were going to elicit this sort of testimony from the witness. And that should be disclosed. The other side has to prepare. It's basically a disclosure issue. If you fail to disclose that you have like a smoking gun piece of evidence, the judge can rule, throw it out. There has to be exceptions to when that sort of evidence can
Okay,
come
everyone,
in.
please be seated. Okay, members of the jury, I want to confirm while you're away on break, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves, you did no investigation and received no information. Is that all correct? Okay.
Your Honor, I
And
pulled
also,
chat. We
members
don't
of the
have any
jury, I
jury
wanna,
in here.
Tell you that I'm directing that you disregard the very last question and answer regarding the standard of care. So I've granted the motion to strike that testimony, so you are to disregard it. Mr. Whitney.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm not sure if the jury understands how much of that testimony there was.
Right, we were going to turn to your evaluation of the audit. If we could display for the jury Exhibit 2007,
first page.
So the defense did not, or sorry, the plaintiff did not disclose that this witness.
All right, so this is your
the
cover
hospital
page of your
acted
evaluation of
poorly.
Beata Kowalski, is it not?
It is.
And your data report here
Randy,
is
welcome.
December 5th, 2016, and about a month before Maya's. And that's because you could visit with Beata outside of the hospital. She was not in the hospital, correct?
Yes, and my last contact with Beata was in November, but it took me a couple weeks to get the report down. I was waiting on documents.
All right. And I won't belabor it, but the first, second, and third pages run through again the multitude of records that you reviewed. Much of them overlap what you reviewed for the other family members. Is that true?
Yes.
All right. Turning to the bottom of page 4, you briefly recount some of Beata's childhood and family history. I want to focus for a moment on Beata describing her father as verbally and physically abusive. And then I want to turn to page 5, where she relayed to you at the top that his primary method of discipline was hitting with a belt. And I want to ask you first, she provided you with a questionnaire before you conducted the interview, is that right?
Yes, she filled out a psychosocial history that asked some of this information.
And was it in the questionnaire that she first indicated to you that her father was a disciplinarian?
Yes.
And having that information from Beata Kowalski, did you follow up with her and ask further questions?
I did, and that's in my clinical notes.
What did you learn, in essence, about this physical discipline?
She said she didn't remember much from her early childhood, but she denied that he physically abused her in the sense that you would be making an abuse report in the state of Florida. It did sound like he used corporal punishment from what she could remember. We specifically discussed this because it was referenced in some of the other information about statements that might have made it in one of the reports.
And having explored that with her, did you feel that she suffered from any trauma from the corporal punishment?
No, I did not. Not just from speaking with her, but the other information that I reviewed, which is listed.
All right. Turning to the bottom of that page, I just focus on the last two sentences. There was no evidence of a formal thought disorder or that she was experiencing any perceptual disturbances. Overall, she did not appear to suffer from any major disturbance in mood, cognition, or behavior. Would you explain a little bit for the jury what you mean by that?
It's part of my evaluation. We administered several instruments that are listed and discussed in the evaluation, but as part of the clinical interview, too, I asked specific questions, and her reports to the particular questions that I asked her led me to believe that
physical,
that there was no significant
like spankings,
social emotional problems
or
right.
whooping.
And turning to page 6, she disclosed to you several medications, and at the bottom of the page, including what I believe to be maybe an anxiety medication. You were aware of those medications?
She listed them out for me, and some of those are included from information and medical records, not only from Dr. Wasserman, but Sarasota Memorial Hospital, I believe it was from.
Nonetheless, you didn't become aware of any mental health disorder in her history?
No. I know she was, the hospital records that indicated that after a court hearing she had passed out, and she went to the hospital, and they had said she was very stressed that day, but it certainly didn't give any type of long-standing mental health diagnosis.
All right. Then I'm going to, sure you'll be happy, I'm going to fast forward all the way down to summary and recommendations, page 16. And let's just focus on what you found.
It's going to be spicy.
With Beata Kowalski. Like you just said, you reiterate here in the first sentence, there's no evidence that Beata has ever suffered from mental health problems, correct?
That's stated in the first sentence, correct.
Right. And the collateral interviews, what was the consistent, if there was there a consistent description of Beata that came across in all the collateral interviews?
There was, and I have specific questions that I ask in all the collateral interviews. I always ask about concerns about substance abuse, concerns about mental health, how they know the person, the frequency of their interactions, how long they've known them. And the consistent thing is there was nothing reported to me in the collaterals that they were concerned about our mental health when I asked them specifically, but they also did not describe any behaviors of concern. Like I wasn't asking them to assess Beata, but they didn't describe any behaviors that would lead me to believe that she had any significant mental health problems. They all, I think, were aware of the current situation with their daughter's health, and that would impact all the family members, concern for the minor child. But beyond that, they didn't express any concerns about her mental health.
All right. And in totality, it seems like the collateral interviewees described her as an attentive, loving mother.
Yes.
Then you move into, in the middle of the paragraph there, that Beata could be forceful and direct, and that could come across as rude and demanding, right?
Yes.
And that came across to you at times in your interviews?
It did when she was expressing her frustration over the lack of professional care she believed was not being provided to Maya when she was at All Children's.
All right. And again, you found no evidence to support the conclusion that she falsified Maya's medical condition, right?
No.
Nor did any of your collateral interviews or the records indicate any ulterior motive she might have had for doing so.
That is true.
And so for those reasons, you conclude here that factitious disorder by proxy may safely be ruled out, right?
Yes. That's the latter half of that sentence.
And factitious disorder by proxy is the DSM name for Munchausen by proxy, is it not?
They changed the name when they revised the DSM.
What is the DSM briefly, in case we haven't touched on that enough yet?
It's the manual for mental disorders where they make diagnoses. A lot of hospitals refer to the ICD-9 as well. And there is like an overlap in the way they code for insurance billing purposes, but it is the manual that people refer to when they're diagnosing mental health conditions, or at least psychiatrists and psychologists use.
So, if the evidence shows that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital had leveled a diagnosis of Munchausen by proxy, did you come across any records in your review of the Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital medical record where you found that they'd ever evaluated Beata Kowalski?
I did not, and she did not report being evaluated by anyone at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
In your field, in the field of psychology, is it appropriate to diagnose someone with a mental health disorder that you have never evaluated?
It is not in my field appropriate to do so.
Let's turn now to Jack Kowalski. And this is Exhibit 2008. I'm really going to speed up here.
I'm predicting spicy cross on this witness.
You got of Jack Kowalski after running through this process we've already discussed for Beata and Maya? I
didn't have any significant concerns about his mental health either. I think certainly having an ill child places a certain amount of concern and stress, within the family. But again, I reviewed a lot of information. I spoke to a variety of collaterals, and I will note that the collaterals, there were some overlaps, but there were a lot of collaterals that I spoke for example, with Jack, that I didn't speak to with Beata. They had different collaterals, and nobody expressed any significant concerns about his mental health either.
All right, so in all the investigation that you did, you never came across anyone that expressed a concern about Jack Kowalski or his mental health?
No, in fact, some of his collaterals commented that he had been in a very stressful job before he had retired, and that he always handled those stressful situations he did a great job of handling them.
All right.
Within the fire department. She's like a supervisor. She dealt with a lot of stressful situations.
She's very
Let's
quiet.
turn for a moment, if we could publish Joint Exhibit 1001, starting evidence, page 3795.
They're trying to regain the grounds without crossing that line again.
This is a continuation of a progress note from, again, Dr. Katzenstein, dated November 4th, 2016.
Asthma, seasonal allergies, shellfish allergies.
Jack Kowalski has no pathology or mental health disorder that you found or suspected, correct?
No, not any information that I have
Nor
taken.
did the hospital ever have any evidence that you saw of Jack having a mental health disorder.
Objection to leading.
I never reviewed any medical information from not only this hospital but another hospital that was suggestive of mental health disorder.
Or in the psychological records you reviewed, there was no suggestion of a mental health disorder.
Not that I can recall.
All right, focusing on the recommendations here.
Jack was a firefighter, I
And
believe.
this is Jennifer Katzenstein. I'm sorry. Let's turn to page 3796. My apologies. Similar tenor to at the top of the page. Again, Jennifer Katzenstein, now we're on November 2nd. So in the absence of Jack Kowalski having any suspicion of mental health disorder or pathology, the recommendation from Katzenstein and Kathy Beatty of social work is that Maya would benefit from a medical foster care setting and be separated from her father?
That's my understanding based on the review of the notes. I did not speak with Dr. Katzenstein about that.
No further questions at this time.
That's the father right there. That's Jack.
Mr. Shapiro.
Okay, here we go. It's going to be gloves off here. It's going to be gloves off.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You were hired by the attorneys for the Kowalskis, correct?
That is true. I was referred by them. The Kowalskis signed my engagement letter and paid me. You're absolutely right. That was referred, and it's in my consent.
Right. And just so there's no dispute about this, you were not an independent court-appointed psychologist. Instead, you were retained by the Kowalskis, paid by the Kowalskis for your work.
That is true. It was not a court-appointed neutral.
Okay. The reason why you were involved was because there was a dependency action going on with DCF in the state of Florida, and one of the questions they needed to visit with you was about visitation. Is that true?
It's been a long time, but I know that when I have limited documentation providing me about the dependency action, but my understanding is that there were some concerns about the parents and that there were psychological evaluations that while they're being requested and they agreed to, I did not see a court order for them. There may have been, but that I was going to evaluate the parents, and it was as part of the dependency.
Okay, and I'll show you those records next, but just to be clear, in fairness, you're not a medical doctor, true?
No, I said that more than once.
Okay, I won't belabor it, I promise you.
No, it's true, I'm not.
Okay, you're not here to tell this jury whether Maya has CRPS or not based on your diagnosis.
That is absolutely true.
Okay. You have, since your evaluations of Maya, I believe, were in December and January 2017? You visited with Maya in December of 2016, Adult Children's.
I believe it was before December that I met with her as a collateral because it was early on in the process. I could go back and look at the notes, but it had to probably be, I would say in probably early November that I went up there just to meet with her. And at that point, I even previously testified when they inquired about her. I was using her as a collateral. I didn't do any type of assessment, in that meeting with her. It was the evaluation was later.
After you completed your evaluation of Maya and completed your report, you continued to work with Mr. Anderson's office on this case, true?
I I believe around 2020, I participated. I could give you the date. It was around 3 or 4 years ago. They asked me to participate in a call, which I did. I know both attorneys' offices and have requested some information from me, records. And then just prior to this trial, I was deposed, I believe, by All Children's. And then today I was subpoenaed by them, and everybody compensated me for my time.
So let me ask you just a couple questions about
Sure.
your report, which is, in Clay, if you'll put it up, it's Joint Exhibit 2006, and I'll go to page 11. And it's going to be the under Summary and Recommendations, the second paragraph. I think it's the third sentence. It starts with the Department of Children and Families.
Yes.
And these are your words, correct, that you're writing here?
Yes, this is my report.
And you wrote that, quote, the Department of Children and Families intervened and cut off Maya's contact with her parents, siblings, treating doctors, therapists, priests, and friends. That's what you found, correct?
That was my understanding at the time.
Okay. Your understanding was it was the Department of Families intervention that cut off that communication, correct?
That was my understanding.
Let me ask you about some of the records that you reviewed. Well, let me back up for a minute. You understood that All Children's could not discharge Maya without a court order, correct?
Objection.
Legal basis.
It's beyond the scope, and it's delving into issues that's subject to an order of limine.
Overruled on that question.
I don't recall the specifics, but I do know, because I wasn't at all the dependency hearings. I tested a few times, and I know that there were attorneys from All Children's, as well as the dependency attorneys. The family had different attorneys, and the Department of Children and Families had several. And I know at some point, I do recall, there was this issue of not being able to discharge. I didn't really follow it all, but I do recall something about being an issue with that.
Let me go back to your report since we have it on the screen. And I'll probably jump around from time to time.
Jessica, we have your comment on the screen.
So let me
Thank
ask
you very
about
much.
the last
Appreciate what you bring to the
sentence
channel.
that you wrote. It says, no less than 3 medical doctors have diagnosed her medical condition, and no less than 3 mental health professionals have evaluated Maya, none of whom have confirmed a diagnosis of factitious disorder. Those were your words?
Yes.
The 3 doctors you spoke to were Dr. Kirkpatrick, Dr. Hanna, and Dr. Chopra, correct?
I did not speak to Dr. Chopra. I testified that when I reviewed his report, and then I reviewed a neurology report. I think I referenced her. I can't remember. I think it is Dr. Barr, maybe, that had diagnosed her with CRPS as well.
Your statement, though, about who diagnosed Maya with CRPS was based on those 3, correct?
Yes.
You did have records from a physician that had diagnosed factitious disorder. Did you know that?
I believe recalling that, I do recall maybe early on seeing some of that.
Okay, because you didn't put in your report to the court or who would read this that there were physicians who diagnosed factitious disorder, did you?
I recall specifically reviewing the records that there were some rule outs in one of the physicians. I don't know if I recall specifically the diagnosis, but I know that the thing that I kept testifying to in the hearings is I think they need to figure out, I was being told the child had a medical issue, and that they need to figure out what, if she did or not, in order to find the appropriate diagnosis, because as a psychologist, I cannot make certain diagnoses if there is a medical condition that's causing the symptomology.
Clay, if you'll put up Defense Exhibit 3047-10.
Is this an evidence?
The Tampa General records?
It's not evidence.
Oh, okay. Then
Let's not put it up if it's not an evidence.
I apologize. I thought this was part of the joint. Let me ask you about what you did review and what is in evidence. One of the reports that you did review was that of Dr. Lewis, and I know that.
I do.
Okay. And that was one of the reports that you had to review and comment on when you did your evaluation of Maya. Is that right?
I did review it. In fact, one of the things he specifically requested in that evaluation was the person evaluating the mother have that evaluation.
This is in evidence, Your Honor, Joint Exhibit 1046.
The tablet in front of her face,
Put that
that's a
up
monitor
there.
so she can see the
Go to page
exhibits.
7, please.
That's one of them.
Just for the purpose of background for this jury.
She's looking at a different one,
Dr.
though.
Lewis performed his psychological evaluation of Maya while she was at All Children's Hospital. True?
That was my impression from reading it, because they said a nurse was there, but I never specifically asked where the evaluation took place.
Okay. Well, I'll represent to you that Dr. Lewis met with Maya at All Children's.
Okay.
Let me ask you about 2/3 of the way down the page about a statement that Dr. Lewis records. It starts open quotes, "my mom." Clay, if you could point that out, please. It says, "My mom," and I'll represent to you, this was what Dr. Lewis is quoting what Maya told him, okay? "My mom and the doctor in Tampa said I got RSD because of my asthma attacks. I don't know what to believe because I really don't want to have RSD, and also I really don't want to go back on all of those pills or have the ketamine anymore. But I'm afraid to tell my mom how I really feel because I don't want her to be more sad and upset than she really is." Did you read that in Dr. Lewis's report?
I did.
Okay. Let me ask you if you also read in Dr. Lewis's reports, and I'll go up, Clay, where the paragraph that starts "Maya further states." The last sentence, Maya reported to Dr. Lewis, it says, "I can't be sure because I don't remember things like I used to. After I went to Mexico and they put me in a coma and my memory got bad." Did you read that as part of Dr. Lewis's report?
I did. I read the entirety of the report.
At the top of the page, did you see that Maya had told Dr. Lewis that she understood that going to Mexico for her ketamine coma unfortunately carried a 50% risk of death?
I did read that.
And did you factor that into your evaluation as well?
I did. I will note, though, I did not discuss any of this with Maya when I did the collateral interview. When I interviewed her, it was 2.5 months later. I mean, I've got the dates in front of me. And I referenced some of the comments about Dr. Lewis because I had spoken with her. And it's referenced in my report that she denied making some of these statements to me.
Okay, so we'll get to that in a moment, but let me ask one of the other statements that she made that you may have discussed. And Clay, it's the last full paragraph on this page that starts, "In fact, Maya states." It says, "In fact, Maya states," and this is to Dr. Lewis, the psychologist who evaluated All Children's, "I really want to tell my dad a lot of what we're talking about, but because of what happened to me, getting on those really bad medicines that could have even killed me, I don't get to see my mom right now. I do get to see my dad, but someone has to be in the room with me. I just want to tell him," meaning my dad, "that I want my mom to get help." Did you review that?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you about a couple things that you wrote in your report. And you do recall that one of the working diagnoses of Dr. Lewis was factitious disorder by proxy.
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions.
I believe when he stated that he's the one that made the referral to the neurologist.
Dr. Lewis also said that Maya had an understandable severe anxiety and depressive response when learning about the ketamine infusions in Mexico. Do you remember that?
I don't have it in front of me, but I recall it.
Okay.
Something to that extent if you're reading it in the report.
So let me ask you a couple of questions about your report, if we can put it back up. This is Trial Exhibit 2006-11. I just want to make sure I understand this. You made the comment about warehousing Maya. Do you remember telling the jury that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last
Well, let me just make
I just couldn't hear
clear.
the last part, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're
What happens if
certainly
they
not
ask her
telling this jury that in
about
reviewing
standard
the
of care?
records from all children's that there was only 3 hours of therapy, are you?
The records that I was provided to me, I counted the minutes, I can pull it out. If I have the records that were given to me, like I said, just based on what I have, based on, like I said, testified earlier, Dr. Katzenstein, I can go through the dates and give you what I looked at Dr. Katzenstein provided. She did see another, early on, another psychologist. I never spoke to that person. It was early on in treatment, but it was Dr. Katzenstein's notes that spanned. I just went through the notes that were provided to me that are listed and highlighted, the date and the time.
Who provided you the records?
Some of those I had historically, and then I had them, and then I was again provided them by opposing counsel. Like they're the same records, but I had both, and like they provided them separately, but I had them. I believe it was maybe Deborah Salisbury that provided me initially that got them from All Children's.
Right, and when you say opposing counsel, you mean counsel for the Kowalskis?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I got them both places. I mean, recently, but I had them too.
Are you aware that there was more than 60 hours of physical therapy at All Children's Hospital?
I did not go through the physical therapy, but I knew that they were prescribing. I'm talking about psychotherapy, not physical therapy.
Okay, you are aware, well, and if you're
Two
not.
different things. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm talking about the psychotherapy.
I do, because
Okay.
there seemed to be an allegation that all Children's did was, quote, warehouse this child, but you were aware she underwent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of physical therapy, right?
I knew she was resistant to physical therapy. I know that they provided it to her, but I also knew they never followed through to figure out, it sounded like what was going on, which I was really surprised because I know that All Children's has some good neurologists up there.
So let me just show you Joint Exhibit 1001-1951.
Your Honor, we object.
Is this in evidence?
Not to the exhibit, Your Honor, to the line of questioning.
Overruled. You can continue, Mr.
Sure. Clay, Joint Exhibit 1001-1951. I'm just pulling out a physical therapy note of October 31st, 2016. According to this, there was therapeutic activity for 45 minutes. Do you see that?
Yes.
Same objection.
Overruled.
I think we're going to get triple digits today.
Joint Exhibit 1001-1953. Again, there's 15 minutes of PT therapeutic activity and 30 minutes of PT therapeutic exercise, correct?
Yes, I haven't reviewed these recently, the times on these, but
Okay.
I was talking about psychotherapy earlier, not physical therapy.
You do understand that physical therapy is a big part of rehabilitation for either conversion disorder, factitious disorder, or CRPS, do you not?
It's my understanding that it's also often recommended. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm certainly not an expert on CRPS.
Okay. So without going through 3 months of records, you're certainly not disputing that Maya had over 60 physical therapy and over 30 occupational therapy sessions for which she participated in, are you?
No, I'm not disputing that at all. In fact, I think a lot of the psychotherapy sessions when I went to see her, she was in PT. It referenced that, so they couldn't provide it. So I knew she went, in addition to looking at the records.
Let me put up Joint Exhibit 1001-3746. I was going to ask you about the cognitive and psychiatric therapy. Impressions and recommendations. This is from a Dr. Mark Cavett. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Who is he?
He's a psychiatrist, been up there a long time.
Okay.
He's a good doctor.
Actually, Clay, at the bottom of the page, this is for the note. Impressions and recommendations right at the bottom. This was on admission. Were you aware that mom refused a psychiatric consultation on admission?
I was aware of this. I kind of alluded to it earlier, that I knew that there were 2 notes on him, and only one of them that he had seen the child on.
Okay. Are you aware that throughout this hospitalization there were multiple attempts by All Children's Hospital professionals to transfer Maya from All Children's Hospital to Nemours for intensive physical and cognitive behavioral therapy.
Objection. Legal basis.
Misstates the evidence.
Overruled. You can answer.
I do recall there was a discussion because I was provided some records. They were provided, and there was a reference in some of the psychotherapy notes where Dr. Katzenstein mentioned Nemours, but I was never given the information of what you're suggesting. I don't know how many attempts. I just know that there was some discussion of trying to get her to Nemours.
Okay. And it's a big record. I'm not expecting that you read every page. I'm trying to be fair to you. Okay. Your understanding, though, in talking with Dr. Katzenstein was that either she or her team was trying at some point early in the hospitalization to transfer Maya from All Children's Hospital to Nemours in Orlando for intensive inpatient or outpatient cognitive and physical therapy.
I saw it in Dr. Katzenstein's note. She never shared that with me specifically. She talked about her work with Maya, but again, I do remember as part of the dependency action that issue came up, and I just heard pieces of it, as far as when I was going down there to testify, and I know that it wasn't clear to me about why all that never happened. I believe that there was some suggestion they couldn't provide the medical treatment. There may have been an objection, but I wasn't really involved in that aspect of it.
Okay, let me show you a record and see if it refreshes your recollection of something that you may have seen. This is Joint Exhibit 1001-1765. And I'll represent to you at the top, this is an addendum by a case manager named Audrey Peterson, dated November 10th. And Clay, if you'll go down to where it says provision of care in the note, actually start at projected discharge planning and go through provision of care. Were you aware that the parents, meaning the Kowalskis, declined to sign their consent to transfer Maya out of All Children's on November 10th?
I don't know if I recall that time. Like I said, I recall there being some type of dispute and the child not being transferred, but I do not recall the specifics because
and I object to this line of questioning unless we're going to put into evidence the actual document being discussed.
I'm overruling the objection.
Okay. Let me ask you about Joint Exhibit 1001-1760. And on the part where it says Level 2 Case Management Intervention, about halfway down it says her parents continue to resist to sign the consent to transfer to Nemours. Were you aware of that happening on November 17th, 2016?
I do not recall if I was aware. Again, all I recall is I knew there was a dispute as part of dependency action, and there was some concern about the medical care, which is beyond my scope, being provided at the facility. But I do know that I received records that I believe they were going to send Nemours to when they were, I know that placement was explored. But it is my understanding by all, but I didn't know the outcome.
Transitioning a bit. You did go to All Children's to visit with Maya the first time, right?
Yeah, to interview her.
For a visitation you were allowed in, right?
Yes.
You understood, though, that you couldn't do a diagnostic workup and treatment without staff privileges.
I did, and I've testified to that before when they asked me questions about her after the collateral interview.
Right. That's not unique to All Children's. That's all hospitals.
Yes, it is. In fact, when I called, I knew it's a lengthy process because I've been on staff at a couple of hospitals. And so when I called up there initially, I did not anticipate, I inquired about it. Actually, it was later that I inquired because the collateral didn't need to be on staff, but I was not surprised that it was not a quick process.
Okay. When you first went to All Children's, I believe let me ask you, Kathy Betty greeted you and brought you to Maya, correct?
I don't recall if she greeted me, but I think I testified earlier that I believe she is the one I spoke to. They go to my notes, but they, made arrangements for me, like I didn't have any difficulty finding her or anything like that.
And that was my question.
Yeah.
The process from when you went to All Children's to meet with Maya, it was smooth, right?
I had no issues in going up there, checking in. They helped me find the rec room. They offered to try to find me a room because it was a Saturday. A lot of the stuff was closed down. And that's when I said, I think this will be, fine. Mine was fine. And I testified earlier about the corridor. It was, there weren't people around. And I stayed about an hour. And I let them know when I was leaving. I, walked her back to the rec room.
Okay. You then saw Maya again at the courthouse on January 6th, correct?
That date sounds correct on the report in front of me. But
In your evaluation of Maya was at the courthouse?
It was.
Okay. During either interview with Maya, and just for the sake of speeding up, either meeting her at All Children's or evaluating her at the courthouse, did Maya ever complain to you about physical abuse?
She never used the word physical abuse or suggested anything to me of that nature. I'm a mandatory reporter, which everybody has informed me of. I would have had to call the abuse hotline, and I would have notified everybody. I know you don't have to, but that's my policy.
Okay. If you had, because you're a mandatory reporter, if you had even a reasonable suspicion of some type of abuse of Maya occurring at All Children's, you would have brought that to attention of All Children's and called the abuse hotline.
I would have told all the parties involved because I want them to know that I'm the one that had to make the report.
Okay. So just to be clear, during both interviews with Maya, she never told you that she had ever been touched inappropriately, correct?
No, and I believe that was asked that in the deposition as well.
Right. And the reason I'm going through it with you again is I can't just play your deposition.
No, it's okay.
I'm going through it with you again. Maya never complained to you about being held against her will in a darkened room, correct?
No, I never had those conversations. I mean, I reviewed some stuff after the fact, I think, position or maybe, but I was never presented any information during the course of my work with the family.
Maya never complained to you about being held in some type of semi-nude photos or anything of that nature, did she?
No, not to me directly. Okay. It would have been included in my report.
Maya never told you that her rights, her religious rights were being violated, did she?
She did not use that term. I will say that during the collateral interview, I testified this earlier, she expressed frustration because people from her congregation were not permitted. It was her understanding to see her, and that she couldn't see her priest privately. And so when she told me about her attorney, and I went back and contacted her attorney because she had an attorney, and relayed what she had shared with me.
But just to be very clear for this jury while we're here, during your 2 interviews with Maya, she never told you anything that made you suspicious for either abuse or neglect at All Children's, correct?
Not that would be reportable under what we know the statutory definitions of abuse or neglect.
Okay. Let me just ask you a couple more questions about your report. The records, and just to be clear, the records that you were provided, which ones were decided that you would get, was that based on what was provided to you by the Kowalski's attorneys?
No, if you look at my reports I actually got a disc of a large number of records too from the Department of Children and Families. I reached out to, they're the ones that I believe that provided me, like, there was some duplication in some of the records. It's listed in the report, on my report, everything that I got and who I got it from. I obtained some individual records myself where I would reach out to the therapist and some of the medical doctors. But the voluminous amount of records either came from Deborah Salisbury or the Department of Children and Families. Mm-hmm. I did reach out to the children's attorney, but I was not provided documents from them, and that's listed in the report.
When you interviewed
I should have, and All Children's gave me some records directly. I think that's listed in there.
Understood. When you interviewed Maya, She did convey to you that she was told that the ketamine coma in Mexico carried a 50-50 risk of death.
Without looking at my report, I don't recall specifically what she said, but I knew that she knew there was a high risk of death. That's in my report. That she heard the doctor. She said directly the doctor spoke with her about it. I just don't have it in front of me. I mean, I don't want to mistake something.
No, I'm happy to show it to you. That is what your report says.
Okay. Then she said that if I said that.
Let me ask you about your evaluation of Beata. At any time during your evaluation of her, did she express any suicide ideation at all?
She did not.
Okay. And based on your assessment of her, did you consider her to be suicidal?
I did not. I would have taken further action if I thought somebody was at immediate risk for self-harm. As a mental health professional, I can make her act. But she never even described even having thoughts of death to me, much less a plan.
One moment, Your Honor.
Okay, so very gently worded, but very pointed questions. Very good lawyering as well. Let's see if the defense is going to try to regain any lost ground. Or sorry, the plaintiff.
I appreciate your time today. I don't have any more questions for you. Thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Were you aware that the only person in this admission at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital that claimed to have diagnosed Munchausen by proxy was Dr. Sally Smith?
I don't recall seeing anyone else making that diagnosis other than Sally Smith.
And you're aware that she's a rotation director for the residency program at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital?
Wow, a rotation director made that diagnosis? That's interesting. The jury's heard that. Let's hear what happens here. If prior events is any indicator, the judge is going to sustain this objection, and it's going to be stricken from the record. I feel bad for the judge having to hunch over and lean over his desk and talk to people. Defense is still arguing their point. A lot of times that might mean that the judges needs more input from that side. They're nodding. Let's see if the plaintiff objects here. Nope. Oh, eye roll from the plaintiff's attorney. Eye roll.
Okay,
Huge
the
one.
objection is overruled.
So Sally Smith is the rotation director for the residency program at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital.
I do not recall being aware of that specific appointment, but I know that she had some affiliation with them.
And you're aware that she had staff privileges at the hospital?
That was my understanding when I said affiliation.
And you're aware that she serves on multiple executive committees at the hospital?
Back to the leading, Your Honor.
I'm going to sustain the leading.
Are you aware that Dr. Sally Smith serves on multiple executive committees at the hospital?
I do not know if I'm aware of that, but again, I knew that she did some work at the hospital and that she had privileges.
So there was a lot of discussion about Dr. Lewis and him coming in to evaluate Maya at the hospital. Are you aware that the hospital was directed to conduct a neuropsychological evaluation?
I do not recall specifically that the hospital was directed. I knew that I got his evaluation because Dr. Caston's a neuropsychologist as well.
Are you aware that Dr. Sally Smith handpicked Dr. Lewis to come and do the neuropsychological evaluation?
Your Honor, I just object to the leading. I'd like the witness, anyway, object to the leading.
Okay, sustained on leading.
Are you aware how Dr. Lewis was selected to perform the neuropsychological evaluation at the hospital?
I recall reading in some of the information, I believe it may have been in his report, I don't have it in front of me, that the referral, Dr. Smith made a referral.
Right.
I am aware of that.
And so several statements were put on the screen about what Maya allegedly said to Dr. Lewis. Are you aware that Maya disputes Dr. Lewis's reporting?
She disputed some of that specific reporting to me, so I'm aware of some of that.
That's where she leaned over and talked to her attorney.
Earlier you testified, I think, on my questions that, and perhaps on counsel's questions, that you, subject to request from the hospital, provided your raw testing data and the totality of your file for these psychological evaluations, did you not?
It was for Maya's, I believe, the raw test data. I believe they had a hearing, and
all right, so Dr. Lewis makes these statements which Maya disputes. Are you aware that when a request was made to Dr. Lewis for his raw testing data and notes, he claimed to have lost them?
Object to the leading again.
I'm not aware
I'm
of
going to
any.
overrule that one.
I'm not aware of any records requests other than what was made to my office.
So have you ever seen the notes or a recording of the interview or raw testing data from Dr. Lewis?
I've only seen his written product, the report.
And during this interview, we've established Maya was on multiple medications from the hospital.
Based on the information and the records that she'd taken medication the day before.
All right. Now, with regards to 4 hours of cognitive behavioral therapy, your comments during my questions were limited to the limited cognitive behavioral therapy that the hospital provided during that 3.5 month span, right?
Yes.
And that's what led you to characterize the hospitalization as warehousing this girl.
Yes, and the fact that my understanding is that Dr. Lewis recommended the neurological consult, and throughout the entire process, everybody said a neurologist would be the one to rule out the diagnosis or confirm that the medical doctors were telling me I'm not qualified to do that. And the information provided to me is that that never happened.
And so you were confronted a minute ago with a bunch of physical therapy and occupational therapy records. You never expressed any opinion on the adequacy of occupational therapy or physical therapy at the hospital, did you?
No.
And in everything they presented you, did they confront you in any way with any additional cognitive behavioral therapy record to dispute the 4 hour figure that you tallied?
No, like I just said, the information I have was a duplicate of what I'd previously gotten that y'all provided me with regard to the psychological and psychiatry notes.
The problem that you were pointing out, if I understood you correctly, was that they were alleging that Maya had a psychological disorder. Meanwhile, they provided 4 hours of psychological therapy over 3.5 months.
It's leading in asking answer.
I'm going to sustain the asked answer.
What is the problem with alleging that a 10-year-old girl has a psychological disorder but not providing therapy, if there is a problem with that?
Well, I think at a minimum, even though I didn't evaluate Maya early on, at a minimum she was on a psychotherapy regimen of getting it weekly. So I would have expected them at least to start with that, and then if she made significant improvements, they might, titrate the therapy, go to both bi-weekly or less frequently. And I think that even whether her issues were psychological exclusively, as some people are taking the position of, or whether it was a medical problem and there were some psychological problems interrelated, secondary, I think certainly the professionals that worked with her in the mental health field, Dr. Katzstein was even seeing this child was very distressed over a lot of the circumstances. And I think that there was a lot of documentation where, I didn't do the PT, that she got PT because they would go to get psychotherapy and she would be gone, but then there was no makeup session in the hospital.
All right, last area. There was discussion about these attempts to transfer Maya Kowalski to Nemours. Are you aware of the transfer diagnosis that the hospital actually tried to transfer her under to Nemours?
I think I said earlier, I don't recall the specifics of it. It's been a long time. I just knew that there was some dispute on whether it was going to be an appropriate placement based on, I think that there were some concerns about parents had on whether they could do medical. It wasn't clear to me I just knew the child never got moved. It wasn't clear to me all the dynamics between all children's, maybe the dependency action and the parents. I wasn't privy to all that.
And so you weren't aware that Johns Hopkins, All Children's Hospital, was trying to force a transfer?
I object to the foundation. She just said she's not aware, and now he's about to give her a leading question to suggest what she's not aware of.
Were you aware of Beata Kowalski's sensitivity to having Maya Kowalski diagnosed with a psychiatric or psychological disorder?
I was aware from my work with Beata that she was concerned that the medical issues, that she had a real medical problem that was being dismissed and labeled strictly psychological. I did not get the impression in my evaluation of her that she was against any type of therapy or intervention. In fact, her therapist reported to me, and it was in the notes, that her and Maya's dad consistently brought Maya to therapy sessions for therapy after having the illness diagnosed.
All right, so we know that Dr. Katzenstein believed that this child had a physical condition, right?
So she told me.
All right, assume for the purposes of this question that Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital is trying to transfer Maya Kowalski, not with a physical diagnosis, but with a psychiatric diagnosis. Knowing what you know about Beata Kowalski, would it make sense for her to resist those efforts?
Objection to the speculation.
Sustained.
Are you aware of a phone call that was recorded regarding this dispute over the discharge diagnosis to Nemours?
I don't believe that I ever listened to any phone call or was provided information on that. Like I said, I got limited information because my work was pretty focused on what I was doing as part of. They had a lot of hearings I wasn't involved in.
We're one away from triple digits. This is all the objections since trial started.
I think in summary,
statements.
Your testimony is that you're not familiar with all of the dispute over what diagnosis the hospital was attempting to transfer Maya to Nemours under. Is that right?
True, I had limited information on all the transfer, potential transfer.
No further questions. Thank you.
Very brief redirect, Your Honor. Just to cover a couple things. You are aware, at least in your review of the Tampa General records, and again, Clay, if you want to pull up 3047-10.
Is it in evidence?
Tampa General's not?
It's not in evidence.
Okay. Don't put it up on the screen. That's fine. You are aware in your review of the records there had already been discussion of a psychiatric condition prior to Maya coming to All Children's. True.
I was aware that there were some of those issues, and the child was aware because she did not like TGH for that reason.
Because they labeled her with a psychologic condition.
Objection.
That was.
Okay, what's the legal basis?
He's asking, it's speculation.
Overruled.
The reason Maya didn't like Tampa General is because they had diagnosed her with a psychiatric condition, correct?
What I was communicated is that they did not believe her, that she had a medical issue. The resistance was that they were overlooking some of the medical issues, was my understanding. Is why she was upset about them.
Just two really quick points. One on your report, Trial Exhibit 2006-10. At the very bottom it says interview with Sally Smith, MD, CPT, medical director. What is CPT?
Child protection team.
It was your understanding that Sally Smith's role in this case was as the Child Protective Services medical director. True?
I would have not listed it, but if that was not the case, I knew that she was involved with CPT, and that was on the documentation I believe I received from her. I'd have to look at it.
It's not a trick question.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, I would listed it because that was my understanding she was working with CPT. Yes.
Okay. Last question. It's on Joint Exhibit 1046. And I'm going to ask you on question, starting on page 2 at the very bottom. You were asked some questions about whether Maya may have been on medications that may have affected her memory at the time she spoke with Dr. Lewis. Do you remember those questions?
I think I testified earlier that I could not weigh an opinion on them because I'm not a medical doctor.
Okay. You did review this report, though. True. This
Yes.
is Dr. Lewis's report. At the bottom, it says during the 3-hour session, do you see that?
Yes.
Where Maya engaged in many mentally strenuous tasks and some tasks that are physically strenuous due to the visual fine motor, handwriting and copying, and then Clay, if you go to the next page, demands. Maya at no time spontaneously initiates any verbal expressions of pain or cramping. Did you see that?
I did see that.
And in the next sentence, it says, the absence of any spontaneously initiated complaints of pain is noteworthy in that on that day of testing, the only opioid analgesic listed in Maya's all children's medication regimen is PRN, meaning as needed, tramadol, and the attending nurse indicates that Maya has not taken that medication on that morning that she has seen for a 3-hour afternoon assessment.
I was wondering, I think I testified that earlier, that he had said she didn't take medication.
So just to be clear, according to Dr. Lewis's report that you reviewed and relied on to some extent, Maya was not on any medication during his examination.
That was my understanding. I was familiar with the task because I'm familiar with the test that he had her do too.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Brief.
Very brief.
You wouldn't expect that, would you? Okay, let me strike that. You met Maya on 2 occasions, correct?
Yes.
If the record shows that Maya did complain to the doctors at the hospital of physical and sexual abuse on multiple occasions.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike. We're having an approach.
And they're going to approach. The witness is moving over so she doesn't unintentionally overhear the sidebar. That's why she's moving over there. Objection, move to strike. They are very quick on this. We have a poll going right now. If you look at the top of your chat, there should be an option to vote in the poll. Unless you have a device that doesn't like you. In that case, you're not able to vote in the poll, and I apologize for that. The poll is, have you watched the Netflix documentary Take Care of Maya? That's the documentary that was out that covers this story, mostly from the family's perspective. That gives you a lot of background. It's a tearjerker. It's extremely, from what I heard, I have not watched it. I'm in category 3 here. I'm voting. I'll watch it after the trial. But so far we've got, let's see, about 320 votes. 300, now it's 17, 321. Why does it go down? That's interesting. But yes is at 38%. No is at 47%. I'll watch it after the trial at 14%. And what documentary is at 2? Roughly 1 or 2%. So we're coming up on 350 votes. We'll close this out in just a second. The objection count status is showcase showdown. Lots of objections. Do I have to straighten the objection? Do I have to make the numbers a little more centered? Does that bother anyone other than myself? If somebody's OCD is triggered, I'll go to all the work and fix it. But just let me know. I don't think the documentary was made when she was alive. I don't think so. But I haven't seen it. Someone can correct me. I think we've got about all the votes we're going to get, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll now. Giving you ample time to vote. Speak now or forever hold your peace. 3, 2, 1. Which really isn't fair because there's like a 10-second delay between when I say this and when I actually do it. But we're closing it out now. Here we go. All right. Closed out the poll. The results stand about the same. 43% have said no, they haven't watched it. 38% say yes. I'll watch it after the trial, 15%, and about 1% with the what documentary. So the follow-up question, if we were the real scientists, data scientists about this, would be, if you watched the video, the Netflix documentary, do you support the family or the hospital in this case, or as far as who do you think is right? Just that might show us how.
Members of the jury, I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm also going to direct you to specifically disregard Mr. Whitney's beginning of the question. Anything else, Mr. Whitney?
Wow.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
There's nothing further, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, do you all have any questions? I've got a couple of them coming on down.
Here come the questions. Couple questions coming in. I'll see if I can word this poll correctly, because I would like to see what the results are. So just know the next poll is only for people who said yes, they have watched this. Okay, so if people have not watched it and they vote, it will throw off the numbers. So please don't do that. I'll put in all caps, even though that's a rule here. If you let's see, I've got 100 characters. I've got to fit this in 100 characters. It's worse than a tweet. I'm thinking out loud here in my head. Just one second. Okay, so I'm going to say, after watching the Maya movie, okay, here we go. So this poll question is only for people who have watched the Maya movie, okay? So I only want people to vote if you've watched the Maya movie. And if people vote who have not watched the movie, it will throw off the numbers. It's clearly not scientific anyway, but we're trying here. So after watching the Maya movie, who do you support? Whoa. Looks like Brandy's kicking off her next live stream. Just heads up in case somebody was waiting for that. That's starting now. I was first in chat on Brandy's live stream. I've never won anything on her channel before, so that's really cool. You can hear Brandy's stream in the background here. There's so many good things to watch, and I don't. I'm double dipping. If I win it, I promise to re-gift it, Rosebud. I'll re-gift it to the winner here in our stream. I don't think they give away the throne on this one. But. I'm super excited for Brandy. I'm not going to be able to pay attention to this. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But she's got an amazing interview going right now with Mandy Powers. Mandy Matney, and Dr. K, Dr. Kinsey. Just awesome. So, and she's got a smile from ear to ear. So congratulations, Brandy, on scoring a huge triple interview. They're still reviewing the questions. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll while we can.
Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to go ahead and ask all the questions. Just as a reminder, when we're having this, if you want to stand up and stretch, you are more than welcome. Okay. In fact, you're always welcome to stand and stretch, even if we're having questions. Anything that you want to do, that's fine. Okay. Well, I shouldn't say that.
Matthew, that is awesome. That is awesome. Congratulations. You have been you've been super busy with that case.
No laughs with that one.
And $26.8 million judgment yesterday. That is huge.
How many
Great work
hours
for the,
is
for the
appropriate
victims.
for psych treatment without resolving the medical diagnosis?
I evaluated Maya, but it was at the latter end, so I didn't evaluate it early on. But I would have anticipated they would have started with at least an hour minimum of therapy because that's what her prior person that was seeing her was providing. So I would have think at that assessment, then they could determine if they need to increase or decrease their frequency. But I was just shocked with the drastic drop, even overall, because she was getting about at least an hour a week before, was my understanding.
Okay, the next question from the jury. In the absence of medical diagnosis, in the light of the patient treatment, would you or of the PT, physical therapy treatment, would you still use the word warehouse in reference to all children's?
Can you read that one more time?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I misread
No,
it.
you did a good job. Just me, I'm tired.
Judge, you
in
did a
the
good job.
absence of medical diagnosis, in the light of the physical therapy treatment, would you still use the word warehouse in reference to all children's hospital?
I used that term because I did not think they were following up on the neurological home, so I had to figure out what was going on medically with her. And also, they were not providing, there was a lot of suggestion that it was just strictly psychological in nature. And so I would have anticipated getting more than 3 hours of therapy past the initial assessment. As far as PT, I'm not a medical doctor, but in my experience, people that get PT, I've worked in inpatient rehab, they usually have a medical diagnosis to get that. So,
The next question from the jury. Can collateral interviews be performed with individuals that you deem necessary or only with individuals that are provided by your client?
I do both as part of my evaluation. So, they did in this case list the teachers, but it's not uncommon for people not to list people. And so in my work, just not in this case, I often ask to speak to individuals that may be not listed that I know are relevant. Obviously, the people can choose to participate or not. The collateral can. But in this case, I believe that all of the collaterals, the majority of them, the family did provide me as far as the professionals and so forth. But I don't recall anybody specifically say, "Can you call Dr. Katzenstein?" And I make the effort to call her.
The next question. Do you know if there was an option to apply for temporary privileges at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital that would fast track an approval to allow you to evaluate Maya at the hospital, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
My understanding was there wasn't. They just kind of have a meeting, and it's usually 2 or 3 months, because I know that I had some discussions, and it was probably in December. It was prior to me evaluating her, and so there wasn't anything that I was told about, and I couldn't find anything online about it. So I inquired. I think it was actually Catherine Beatty that maybe initially that I had asked about, and she directed me to somebody.
Okay. Plaintiffs, any further follow-up questions?
Nothing from plaintiffs.
No, Your Honor.
Jurors, any further follow-up questions? May Dr. Duncan be excused?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Tashana K. Duncan finishes her time up on the stand. Brought some very interesting testimony in.
Members of the jury, there is one more witness for today. Do you all want or need to take a 5-minute break, or I'm told that we will be able to finish by 5 o'clock if we start right away.
Judge, I do have a small issue I need to bring to the court's attention before the next witness.
Why don't we take a quick 5-minute break?
Sorry.
Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation. Receive no information. But let's keep this to 5 minutes.
All right, for a second thing.
All right, so while they're on a very quick break, we might have some business with the court. I'm not telling people to leave, but Brandy right now has Dr. Kinsey, Mandy Powers, and Mandy Matney on her show live.
Hey, the jury's out of our presence.
I wouldn't blame you at all
Crows,
if
you spoke first.
were curious in the whole Murdaugh situation. We ran over there and watched that. Just a heads up.
And everyone, feel free to sit down if you want. If you need to go use the restroom yourselves, feel free to do that too.
The issue I have with this next witness, Judge, is anticipated hearsay that they're going to try to get from Father Costello, and I wanted to address it with the court now. When Father Costello was deposed,
Let's switch our feeds here.
who told him that
one was hanging up.
he could not pray with Maya because there was a belief the mother was using God and religion to control Maya, so he could not talk to her about religion or give her the sacrament. When he was asked who was that caseworker, he said, I don't know. And then he was specifically asked on page 88 of his deposition, do you recall the name of that individual? No, I just remember I met her in the lobby. Do you recall if she worked for the Department of Children and Families? I don't remember, to tell the truth. So he cannot identify this caseworker as somebody that works for the hospital, and I wanted to raise that now and object to that hearsay coming in.
It sounds like cross-examination to me, and party admissions do not require a specific statement of who someone was, rather just the circumstances. In this instance, this was their hospital, and he can identify by hair color and what they looked like coming down there and having a lab coat on in order to tell him about this. So I doubt very seriously that the CPT people are walking around Johns Hopkins in a lab coat.
Other than Dr. Sally Smith.
Other than Dr.
So
Sally
I've got to
Smith,
count this
that would be
objection
the
as
point
well.
there.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection.
It's coming in.
The theory that Mr. Anderson articulated. What's the next issue?
That was the only issue, Judge.
Okay, bring in
What's
the...
your issue, Mr. Anderson?
What's
My
your
issue
issue?
is with the last witness's cross-examination, we objected to the line of questioning having to do with the transfer to Nemours Children's Hospital. That document was never in evidence. We objected. I moved to strike that line of testimony and an instruction to the jury about it because it was cross-examination on a document that was not in evidence and the witness did not identify.
First of all, the document wasn't evidence. It was the Johns Hopkins All Children's record.
It's the Nemours record.
No, it was Johns Hopkins All Children's record.
Kelly.
Looks like we're getting a whole bunch of Starbucks.
Would you like
Soundbite.
No, thank you.
That's going to get spilled everywhere.
It was Exhibit 1001.
Starbucks delivery.
It was the All Children's record.
I'm overruling that objection in the motion. Anything else?
No, you're right.
Okay. Do any of the lawyers need to take a break, or are we ready to, as soon as the jury's ready, are we all ready to?
Let's just do Father Costello.
Let's go see if the jury's ready.
Okay, this is getting spicy. I love the way the lawyer's like
Let's be careful with all those drinks.
Yes, Your Honor.
the judge is like, don't spill in my courtroom.
New carpet.
Yeah.
Good French.
Okay, we need to see all the drinks. Everyone's got the double latte mocha choco. I don't know what they ordered, but somebody ordered a whole bunch of drinks for, looks like just the plaintiff's side. So they're going to be ready to go at the end of the day. I'll caffeinate it up. There we go. Tear the tab off the drink. Looking good. Don't spill on the Alienware laptop. That's important. Jury's coming in.
Okay, welcome back, members of the jury. Please be seated. Just want to confirm while you're away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation and you received no information. Is that all correct?
Right.
Mr. Anderson, your next witness, please.
Plaintiff's call Father Jack Costello.
When I worked in the R, clergy was always allowed in.
Father Jack Costello is going to come in, and this is going to be, you're going to hear objections during his testimony, but they have to be careful because this guy is probably, I've never met him, but I'm guessing it's going to be very similar to the lady who was wearing the hat. They have to be very careful with that.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. You can cover on this way. You can cover on this way.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Please state your name for the record.
Father John Costello.
And you were at one point priest to the parish that the Kowalskis were members of?
Yes.
Where were you born? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Oldest of 8 children. Went to all Catholic schools, grammar school, high school, college, grad school. When I graduated high school, I went into the Irish Christian Brothers, which is a religious community that teaches school. I taught all over the East Coast, mainly biology, microbiology, anatomy, and different theology courses. Mm-hmm. And then I developed a vocal cord problem when I was in New Jersey, and I finally went to Mass General, and they told me to move to Florida. So that's how I ended in Florida, because the humidity would help my vocal cords stick together.
Got it.
So that's how I ended up here. Back in '93, I left the Brothers because of the voice. I couldn't run the labs. You have to be loud. So I felt a calling to priesthood. So in '96, I was ordained to this diocese. And I went a few parishes, Naples, Bradenton, and then the bishop asked me to go to the cathedral in Venice here. And I was there 13 years.
Her brother Kyle and her father Jack are also
and
there,
are
sitting
you
behind
still,
her.
and I don't know if the term is practicing or are you still...
Well, I'm retired, but I'm still active.
Okay.
Covering,
You're
masses.
called in from time to time.
More than time to time.
All right. And so, you know the Kowalskis?
Yes, yep.
And did you know that you knew the Kowalskis prior to these incidents with Johns Hopkins?
I'm ending the poll now.
Tell the jury about how long and how well you knew the Kowalskis.
How I met them was Sister Frances Lawler, who ran our religious education program, came to me, I think it was in the fall of 2015, early 2016. I mentioned that there was a family in the religious ed program that had a sick daughter, and they wanted me to come to the home and give her the sacrament of the sick. So Sister and I went to their home. That's the first time I got to know them.
Okay. And so, do you have... did you see the Kowalskis then at the church, at the parish?
Yeah, after that, because I met them,
right.
If I had a mass they were at, I'd see Maya there and the family.
So approximately how, before all of this occurred, how long had you known them?
8 months, a year.
Okay.
Jury asking questions is rare,
but you were their parish
some
priest.
states allow it.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity to speak with them from time to time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'd like to then turn to the first time that you found out anything about Maya Kowalski's illness. How did that come about?
Well, as I mentioned, Sister mentioned it to me first.
Mm-hmm.
Then going to the home, Beata, the mother, explained what Maya had been going through. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of months after that, Sister came to me about that the family needed money for medicine for her. Could we help them out?
All right. And was there a drive there at the hospital to try to raise some money for them because of the costs?
Yes. There were, the parish, I spoke before all the masses, and I told people that she had a disease, that we heard that the only way they could treat it was a medicine that in the U.S. they didn't give to children. They had to go to Mexico. So if they'd like to help the family out, they could put checks in the collection, but made out to the family.
And how much did you ultimately raise? Some $14,000?
Roughly about $14,500.
What about the tax implications of that word?
Did there come a time that you found out that Maya was at Tampa General Hospital?
Yes, yep.
And did you visit her there at Tampa General?
Yes, I drove up, went into the hospital, found out what room she was in, went up, and I anointed her.
Did you have any problem getting up to her room insofar as anyone addressing you or delaying you or causing you any problems?
No.
And how long did you stay with Maya? Just
it was a Saturday afternoon. I had to get back for masses, so it was not too long, maybe a half hour.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so then, tell us what happened next. How did it come about that you tried to see Maya again, or did see Maya again?
The next time I would have seen her was I received a call from Beata, and she mentioned that her, Jack, and Kyle weren't able to see her. She was worried about Maya's state of mind and physical condition, and asked me would I go up and anoint her, as well as should get to see a familiar face, I believe she said.
Had you heard by this point about the problems with the traveling Mary statue?
No.
Okay, so the family asked you then just to come in and give a hand since they couldn't. All right, so when you arrived at the hospital, having had no problems at Tampa General, tell us what happened.
I parked my car, I went into the lobby, I went over to the reception desk. I think it was an older person there. Told her who I was, that the family would like me to see their daughter, and she just said to me, well, the caseworker has to approve everyone who sees her, and I said, fine, I'll sit and wait.
Okay. And so who came down? Can you describe who it was?
It was a lady, middle age, brown hair, long, and she had on a white coat and I believe a dress.
Okay, very good. Now, did she allow you to go up?
She allowed me. She said I could go up and see Maya.
Did she put any conditions on it?
She said I could go up and see her. I wasn't able to do anything religious with her.
Why did they say you couldn't do anything, quote, religious with her?
Because she mentioned that they believed the mother was controlling her using religion.
And so did you ultimately get a chance to see Maya that day?
I got up to go up, but it had to be supervised. The nurse was with me for about 10 minutes.
All right. So over this period of time, what did you do? Just talk?
I just talked to her, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And how was she doing when you saw her?
She looked I believe, lying on the bed. She was coloring. She looked withdrawn, quiet.
How about her feet? Did you notice anything unusual about her feet?
Well, as usual, they were pointed in.
Like this or this? Like
inward.
This? Okay. All right. And what time of the year was this? Was it in the summer or fall? Was it around the holidays?
Fall, sometime in the fall.
And would this have been in 2016?
2016, yes.
All right. Okay, so in getting to know Beata through the course of this, how would you describe her to the jury in terms of her feelings about Maya?
As far as she was a loving mother, didn't notice anything different when I anointed her at the home. She'd have the concern as anyone else about a sick child. She seemed to be loving to both Maya and Kyle.
Okay.
Very concerned about her daughter's health.
Certainly. All right. Now, did there come a time then when you came with Beata to a proceeding and sat next to her for support?
Object, Your Honor, and ask to approach.
I didn't hear what that objection was. I could just hear it was an objection. Do you guys hear what it was? feed every couple seconds gets blurry. I can switch to another one, but it makes everyone's faces turn a little bit red, which makes you think that they're like under pressure. So here's the difference between the two. I mean, I've synced them up perfectly so I can swap between the two, but let's stick with this one for a minute. They just said, can we approach? Okay, so objection and then approach. So we don't know the nature of the objection here. I think it still is probably in lines with what they think is coming next on this objection, and it sort of was ruled on already. Went quiet because they're playing static in the courtroom, and it's terrible to listen to. It's awful. It's like a loud white noise being pumped into the courtroom. So you'll hear just a little psh when the mics come back on sometimes. There, now it's perfect timing, but
Objection sustained.
Objection sustained.
And during the
we don't know what it was.
Times before Beata's death, did
That would be
you
Brandy.
have an opportunity to talk with her occasionally and see her?
Yes, I had the occasion to talk to her.
Okay. And how was she doing?
She was under a lot of stress.
Do you think she blamed herself?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Sustained.
Another objection sustained.
So then, how did you learn that Beata had taken her own life?
I don't remember if it was sister or her brother called to let us know that she had passed.
Was it on that day of the suicide?
It was the day she had died, yes.
And what did you do?
They asked if I'd come to the house and say prayers for the dead and be there for the family.
And did you go to see the family?
Yes.
And try to comfort them? And
yes.
It goes without saying, but how were they doing by the time you got there?
Very distraught, shocked, worried about how to tell the kids.
All right. Following this, then, did you have a service for Beata?
Yes, we had a mass in the cathedral.
And during this service, I guess you went over the life of Beata and what she was like, so forth?
Usually what I do to develop a homily is get the family and friends to tell me like what her qualities as a wife, a mother, friends talking, and then from my own experience in the parish.
Right. Were you ever aware that Maya had certain items taken from her at the hospital?
Objection.
Religious?
What's the objection?
Relevance and leading.
Overruled on both. You can answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was told by Beata.
Objection, Your Honor, based on hearsay.
No, it's
Sustained on the
All right. So during the service, did you talk at all to the family as well as the parishioners about the why and how? What did you tell the parishioners to, explain what happened?
Your Honor, hearsay as to what he told other people about things. I'm not sure where we're going, but hearsay.
It's not for the truth asserted, Judge. It's just simply to discuss what what was said and what his belief was.
Sustained.
Okay. And so, after that point, were you able to stay in touch with the Kowalskis?
Yes.
And have they been attempting to get over this?
Yes, over the years, yes.
But it's still difficult for them.
Yes.
Do you believe that from everything you saw and heard from Beata, she was determined to get her daughter out of that situation?
Objection. Irrelevant as to his belief.
Overruled. You can answer that one.
After the ruling that continuance that she couldn't hug her daughter,
Yeah.
I talked to her after that in the courtroom, and she told me that she'd never get her daughter home.
I didn't.
The court sustains the hearsay statements as to what was told to him by Beata Kowalski.
But from everything you saw and knew about Beata Kowalski, what was her point of view or goal?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculative, based on hearsay.
Sustain.
From what you saw and heard, Beata wasn't controlling her daughter with religion, was she?
From what I saw, no.
Your witness.
Okay, let's see how gently they go with this witness. I think they were able to limit the damage with the objections based on what he was able to testify to, and he didn't. He's not an experienced witness, so he wasn't able to sort of work around things and get things testimony in.
Father, how are you?
Good. How are you?
You've been here. I saw you in the hallway. You've been waiting a long time to testify. You doing all right?
Yep.
Okay. Father, I just have a few questions for you. My understanding is that, strike that. You described that you went to All Children's on one occasion and that you were met by a caseworker, correct?
Correct.
Now, it was your understanding before you went that Jack had put you on a list that was approved, correct?
No, not that time.
Not that time, the next time?
The second time I went, yes.
Okay, all right. So the first time you went, were you aware that there was a list of people who had been approved to visit with Maya?
Objection, Your Honor. Calling for testimony on a docket without showing it to the witness, and I don't believe that docket reflects that.
Overruled. You can answer.
Okay. Were you aware that DCF had been involved and that there was, in fact, a shelter order in place for the hospital with regard to Maya?
All I had heard from Beata was that they couldn't see her. I didn't know there was a list, no.
Okay, and you didn't know anything about an order or why they couldn't see her?
No.
All right. Okay. And it's correct, sir, that with respect to the caseworker that you saw that day, you do not know whether or not that caseworker worked for the Department of Children and Family Services, correct?
No, I was just told it was a caseworker.
Okay. You don't know who she worked for, correct?
Right.
Okay. And with respect to the second visit that you went, which was about a week later?
I think it was, or a little in November, or I forget.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Right. But a week or so later, you went back, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at that time, you in fact were able to give Maya the sacrament of the sick or anointment of the sick, correct?
Yes.
And pray with her, correct?
Pardon?
And pray with her.
Yes.
All right. And are you aware, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the hospital had arranged visits with the hospital chaplain or priest to give communion and pray with Maya?
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
They went easy with him.
Mr. Anderson, anything further?
They were able to distinguish between the hospital and caseworker that said no religious rights. No, there's the static noise that we don't want to hear. There's a little approaching here, so we're going to say there was an objection of some sort. Yeah, he looks bad in this one, but if I look in the other feed, he's He's almost too pale. So I need something a cross between the two. If we could just, somebody, sorry, your TV's not broken, that's me. This one goes blurry every few seconds, and the other one is clear. It's something else. It's on my side. It's on my side. I apologize. Inside? My daughter's coming in saying, we saw a falcon in Sam's Club. Yes, Rosebud, you got me on that one. I believe Maya is 17 right now. Going to be turning 18 soon, I think. The red one is bad. It is bad, but the image is high resolution. So let's see. Yeah, it's definitely me. I'm switching back and forth as some feeds drop, or we can drop and switch between other feeds. Their argument should be the hospital chaplain should have reached out to him by phone. I think the falcon's probably chasing the sparrows. I think that's how it went in Sam's Club. Now I want to go see. I at one point was going to get my falconry license. There's a little trap you can build that uses a mouse as bait, and don't worry, it doesn't harm the mouse, but it's very effective at getting falcons to come and land on the trap. Then you can capture the falcon and release it properly. Hopefully, it's difficult to get a falcon out of the building. You've got to open very big doors and turn off lights and let it fly. The people that Brandy's interviewing are all associated with the Mandy Matney. Are these mine? You brought me Swedish fish? They're yours? Okay. My son showing me that he got Swedish fish. There's falconry up the street from my house. A muse? That's cool. Will Maya testify and when? Yes, old Kibi chick, she will. She actually got on the stand briefly this morning before the jury was in to testify about a document that was trying to be admitted. And her lawyer said to her, this is good practice for later. So there's a very good chance that it will be admitted. I appreciate those of you in chat. If you if we're talking about the mother and how she ended her life, if we can not use the common word that starts with S for that, YouTube's not a big fan of that, and it doesn't. Basically, all it does is make it so I don't get paid for anything I do today if you use that word too much. So it would just be just out of generosity to me and kindness to me to change that. It's not going to shut the stream down or something if we talk about it. But if we use terms like took her own life or something like that instead, that would be a little better approach, or unalive or something like that. That would be, I would appreciate that. I count that as a personal favor. All right. The hospital argument was their priest was seeing her. The hospital priest should have contacted family priest if that was the case and religion was a pressing issue. I think that generally, I don't know, was the hospital priest a Roman Catholic, or because the family was very staunch and devout. A lot of times, a devout family in worship, they would prefer to have a priest that is specifically from their denomination, so that the rites and everything would be, or the practices would be familiar, instead of just like a non-denominational type approach. So a doctor used the term self-terminate. That's one of the terms. I'm not sure if hospitals have to have them on hand, but it sure is convenient when they allow representatives to visit. Obviously, the situations are or unique to every situation, but I've benefited, and I know people that I've visited under that setting have felt like they've benefited by allowing visitors in to assist them with religious endeavors. Let's see. Long discussion here. Okay. There was some agreement.
So you may proceed.
That hearing, you went to assist and comfort Fiala. Did she, was this right before she committed suicide?
Yes.
And did she say anything to you to indicate now what she was going to do? What did she say? What, if anything, did she say about the reason for all this?
What she had shared with me was, my daughter's deteriorating. We got to get her home. And they're blaming me.
Ms. Crowells.
So, Father, just to be clear, you were with her at a hearing when she made this statement, correct?
After the hearing, yes.
Right, and this was this was in the dependency court hearing with DCF, correct?
Yes, yeah.
They may have agreed to this. There might have been a stipulation that they agreed to.
Nothing further.
Members of the jury, do any of you have a question? Question? Okay. Father, may this witness be excused?
You may.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Father, you're free to go.
All right, thank you.
That should be our last witness for today. Let's see if there's any legal wranglings that need to take place outside the presence of the jury.
Okay, members of the jury, that's going to conclude the testimony for today. Obviously, put your notes back into the red well. My normal statements always apply. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information. As you may recall, on Friday we talked about how I've got matters that I need to handle outside your presence. So we're not going to have you in tomorrow. So your next day that you're going to be with us is Thursday. So I want you at the rallying point at the same time that Deputy Coley has asked you to be there for previous days. Okay? Have a good 2 days, and we'll see you on Thursday.
All right, jurors exit.
I anticipate if there is anything to be done tonight, it's probably going to be more logistical in nature. We'll probably talk about either witnesses that are upcoming or possibly documents that need to be admitted, and maybe some of those issues that they have not yet found agreement on that maybe they can now. So this is in Florida, Tara.
The jury's out of our presence. Everyone feel free to go ahead and have a seat. And before you ask, plaintiffs used 3 hours and 40 minutes. The defendant used 1 hour and 40 minutes. So grand total, the plaintiffs have used a total of 7 hours, 5 minutes. Defense has used a total of 2 hours, 10 minutes. I assume that's what you're going to ask me.
I was going to ask the judge.
Pretty close.
Okay. Are there other issues we need to address? Tomorrow at 9 a.m. we're going to handle the legal issues. I've got a half day that you could have. Obviously, we don't need to use all of the half day if you can be more quick about it.
Keeping time is normal in a civil trial.
And with counsel, we could start a little later than 9 a.m. Could we possibly start at 10? I don't think that the issues we have will require a full 3 hours. as I understand it, we have, although as the court looks at me, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, these two sides could take 8 hours on what color the courtroom is. But
what color is the courtroom, Mr. Just kidding.
Don't get us started.
Orange.
So in
there's
any
a
event,
spill. You have a spill on defense.
Can we start at 10?
Maya's cleaning up the spill. The judge is watching Maya's.
I'd even go 9:30.
I'd be more comfortable with 9:30 as a compromise. I'm not quite sure how long. I mean, there's about a half a dozen jury instruction things that I really hope to get rulings on, so I can start streamlining the jury instructions.
And I've got witnesses coming in that I need to stay up and prepare. So
I've got hearings all afternoon, so just don't jam me for the afternoon.
Don't jam me.
I will go with you all for the 9:30.
Okay,
so
so-
I know the notice of hearing says 9, but we'll make it 9:30.
9:30
But
start. We're going to
please,
start
please,
at 9.
Please don't feel like you need to use the whole time.
And witnesses for Thursday, Mr. Anderson?
Defense is asking for
we have
witnesses.
Kirkpatrick, but before that, we have Chopra. And then if that doesn't take all day, which I have a feeling that between those two, that will be both, Judge, we have backups.
Rachel DeYoung.
Yeah, Rachel DeYoung is a physical therapist.
And Corrine Franz.
And Corrine Franz, who is the
If you've got
sister.
Kirkpatrick and Chopra,
That's what I'm saying.
That's going to take all day.
I am pretty confident no one needs backup witnesses for
That's what I
those
told
two.
them.
Judge knows.
And if we finish early,
Yeehaw.
great.
Yeah.
In your honor, if it helps for tomorrow, on the Chapter 39 issues, I'm still very much wanting an instruction on the shelter order and who took her away. The more I listen, the more I do get concerned that there may be factual presentations on the various orders on visitation. And I may try my hand at something, but I'm worried about something that's either too complicated or not complicated enough, and maybe it's not quite the right time yet.
Let's talk tomorrow. That's what I get to me.
Just so long
This
as we
attorney
don't
really wants the judge
jam
to
me up
specify
for my afternoon
to,
hearings.
to the jurors that it was not the hospital that ordered the separation.
Anything else before you all go?
Jack is present in court, yes.
Not from the defense, Your Honor. Thank you.
Now, just one housekeeping item. We're going to run the webinar for the hearing, like
Yes.
we have been doing the last few days. I understand Mr. Elegant is going to be appearing by Zoom, but is everyone else going to be here? Because my assistant's been frantically trying to figure out who needs the panelist information. And so I think she sent it to only Mr. Elegant, meaning y'all are going to be here otherwise.
Yes, Your Honor.
And everybody who's on Zoom now can just use that same link and attend, but Mr. Elegant will make him a panelist so that he'll be able to participate.
Understood, Your Honor.
Okay?
Thank you.
With that, we're in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning.
All right. And with that, here's what we want to do. Let me share with you just a little bit. Thank you for sticking around with me today. This is interesting. Tomorrow we're gonna have a lot of time to talk. So we're gonna cover where we are tomorrow morning. We're gonna go over the case. We're gonna recap everything. The lawyers will be lawyering tomorrow, and it's gonna be spicy. It's gonna be good. The jury will not be there, but the lawyers will be there. It'll be a half day of court. We're gonna meet here at 9 o'clock. It's gonna be great. Right now, what I can ask you to do, please. I would like everybody who's here right now, just even if you're not willing to stay for it or not interested in it, to join with me and jump through the portal and go over to Brandy's channel. Hit the like button as soon as you land, and just say hi and congratulate her on 10K. Say hi to the guests. They've got some great guests over there. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's a personal favor. Brandy's been amazing. She was wonderful to come on the channel here. I'm so excited for her success, and I think she deserves a little bit of celebration. If you could help me with that, that would be great. So we'll do that. I'm going to portal us over. We'll go through the portal. Tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love. Smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better. And please stay safe till we go live again, which will be at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then court starts at 9:30. We'll be following this 9:30. What's Brandy? You're about to find out, Allison. You're about to find out. Brandy Churchwell is amazing. Here we go. We're going through the portal, and somebody do the countdown. Ready? It's an RA raid. Here we go. All right. 3, 2, 1. Give him 10 seconds for this thing to take off. It takes time, all right?